Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Monday, May 4th Board of Supervisors regular meeting. We could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Number 7. Thank you.
My son's on the way to see you.
All right. Anybody want to make a motion about the agenda?
Madam Chair, I'll put forward a motion that we adopt the agenda with the understanding this is the same one that was issued to the public via BoardDocs and other outlets.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All right. At this point, we will go into the school report from Dr. Singers.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. April was a month that reminded us of us all why we love to be Panthers, from water slides to wildlife ambassadors, scholarship ceremonies, state level recognitions. Our CPS students and staff gave us no shortage of reasons to celebrate. I hope you'll indulge me as I just share a few of the highlights because there were so many. On April 6th, our professional development day looked a little different in the best way. Thanks to generous support from the REACH initiative and our 2-year partnership with the Center for Inspired Teaching, our teachers spent the day learning from one another in a dynamic, collaborative format. Particularly memorable was a session led by 3 students from our Teachers for Tomorrow program, Xavier McCracken, Brooklyn Smith, and Haley Valley, who brought powerful student voice and perspective to the professional learning conversation. Watching our future educators teach our current educators was really a highlight of the year. In celebration of Earth Day, our CES students were treated to a special presentation from the Blue Ridge Wildlife Center, courtesy of the Rappahannock League for Environmental Protection. Ambassadors introduced students to a box turtle and a possum, a rat, snake, sharing fascinating facts about each animal's role in our local ecosystem. Meanwhile, our farm to table students partnered with kindergartners for a playground trash pickup, and later in the month were spotted tending to the courtyard garden beds in the beautiful spring weather. A lovely reminder that environmental stewardship is woven into who we are as a full community. In field trip news, we had quite a few trips since spring opened that opportunity up. Our 2nd graders had a memorable field trip to Atlantic Union Bank as part of the My Future Financial Literacy Program, supported by Family Futures. Universal banker Aubrey Freitas welcomed the class warmly, walking students through deposits, coin counting, and the basics of saving wisely. Our pre-K Panthers also enjoyed a fun-filled outing to Messick's on April 24th. Our gifted and talented art students were able to travel to the Smithsonian American Art Museum, sketching their own inspired art and also completing a scavenger hunt connecting art, history, and culture. Jeff Day secured a field trip to the U.S. Capitol building for all seniors to experience a personal tour from former Congressman Tim Romer today in DC. And finally, 8th graders and their junior and senior peer mentors headed to Massanutten Water Park for the 8th grade academy overnight. Swimming, sliding, surfing, or trying to surf, and sharing an all-you-can-eat dinner before overnighting at Graves Mountain Lodge. Many thanks to Jenny Capsa for organizing this event. Career readiness took center stage in April in multiple ways. Our 7th graders hosted their own career fair, and where students displayed detailed poster boards about their chosen careers, dressing the part, and welcoming K-6 students for career passport tours. RCHS also had a career expo and welcomed more than 20 local businesses, with all juniors and seniors attending, and equipped with 10 completed job applications each. Employers identified standout students based on professionalism and communication, some actually scheduling interviews on the spot, and others offering summer internship information. Eric Olemsky from TNM Contracting also visited students in April as the April Trade of the Month speaker, sharing his career path and fielding questions from interested students long after the formal session ended. And in a practical touch, ahead of the Career Expo, Mr. Day and Mr. Long taught male juniors and seniors the fine art of tying a tie and sent them home with one key. Our CHS students enjoyed a beautiful prom that took place on April 18th. This year's theme was The Secret Garden, inspired by Bridgerton and held at the Meadows at Castleton, where students danced, played cornhole, sat by fire pits, and savored a meal generously funded by the Rappahannock County Sheriff's Children's Foundation. Marcus Christian and Adriana Jackson were crowned prom king and queen. Our sincere thanks to the Sheriff Connie and the foundation for their ongoing generosity to our students. The RCHS National Honor Society welcomed new inductees at a ceremony on April 20th. And in another ceremony on the 28th, the RCHS Scholarship Awards were given in a truly moving occasion. Seniors in our small school were awarded scholarships totaling an impressive nearly $170,000 from community organizations and individual donors. The generosity of this community toward our students' futures never ceases to amaze me. Thank you to Angie Jenkins, the RCHS administration, and the Headwaters Foundation for coordinating such a meaningful event. Public safety. Students had an exceptional hands-on learning experience this month, working with Captain Jamie Jenkins, Sheriff Connie Compton, Major Cody Dodson, and John Perry on simulated 911 dispatch scenarios using real radio equipment. Students who completed this portion of the course will sit for an online certification exam through the International Academy of Emergency Dispatch, a credential that is valid for 2 years and gives them a meaningful advantage when seeking employment in public safety. We are deeply grateful to Rappahannock County Sheriff's Office for their continued partnership in making this program possible. I'm thrilled to share a recognition that reflects the caliber of leadership in our division. On April 23rd, the Virginia Board of Education named the inaugural cohort of the Commonwealth's Principals of Distinction. Out of nearly 7,000 principals serving across Virginia, only 31 were selected for this honor, and only 9 of those also earned recognition for achieving a distinguished school rating under the new accreditation in school performance and support framework. I'm happy to report that Dr. Mary Jane Boynton is one of those 9. So please join me in congratulating Dr. Boynton and the entire RCHS team for this extraordinary, well-deserved honor. Last week was senior week. On April 29th, the elementary school hallways filled with cheers as our CVS students lined up to high-five the class of 2026 during the senior parade. A walk down the same halls where their journeys began for most of them. For many seniors, it was a full circle moment, and for our youngest Panthers, a glimpse of the future ahead of them. That's Panther Nation at its best. And I hope you will join us in the culminating event of their entire K-12 journey on May 29th. Please let us know if you plan to attend graduation, and for a couple of you, whether you want to sit with the board or with your family. As always, thank you for your ongoing support of our school system. And as we anxiously await the passage of a state budget, I hope you will consider approving the school budget today so that we can work on getting contracts out after our school board meeting next Tuesday. And this week, with gratitude, it is Teacher Appreciation and Staff Appreciation Week. So if you see a teacher or a school staff member, please say thank you for all the hard work they're doing and are working very hard. You have any questions for me?
I do. Dr. Grimsley, thanks as always for coming month after month. You and I have had a very, I would say, robust back and forth over the years about, I'll just put it as bluntly as I can, return on investment. And I know that sometimes I get called out for sounding elitist by focusing on the number of children that graduate from our high school and head off to a junior college, a junior college or a 4-year college. And, I think you and I have discussed, and I think productively, that while there has to be also focus on the trades, I think it's a reasonable benchmark of a school's success to at least see some students in a typical student population by percentage who go on to university education. And I know I've been critical in this regard in recent years, and for once I want to be positive about this and say that and I've just taken some quick notes, and I've got one mother of future UVA student next to me, but you've got a student, at least one student I know going to UVA, one is committed to Virginia Tech, also through the ROTC program, which is terrific. And then another Skidmore College. So for me, I just want to highlight that as someone who is a steward of taxpayer dollars and as one who represents people who do believe that college education, at least in part, should be an available option to graduating seniors from our school system, given the public dollars that flow into it and the excellence we all expect. I want to congratulate your administration and your students and their parents for all of the successes across the graduating class, including those who are going off to four-year colleges. And I hope that I'll be able to attend graduation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will be at graduation and I'm going to take my seat at the board because it's front row. I'm guaranteed a front row seat. And just to piggyback off what Supervisor Whitson just said, because I have to plug the trades. I also want to throw out there that I know a graduate from last year who had to wait because of his age, who's recently been accepted to the apprentice school down in Newport News area. And I'll just point out it has a 6% acceptance rate. So
I'll be sitting by your graduation. Front row seat, so nothing else. Thanks for all your hard work.
I'll be at graduation and hope you good work.
And I'll be at graduation, so you're gonna have a full house of sound.
So happy.
I just, $170,000 for scholarships is just amazing to me, and I know they come from far and wide, but so many local nonprofits and wonderful donors, so that says a lot, I think, that your graduates have that. What is the total number graduating?
68.
Thank you. I was gonna say, there's no 70, but we're watching.
And I just am really happy about the Rappahannock County Sheriff's Office dispatch program. And if I understand, they're gonna be able to take an online exam and then they have 2 years to maybe put that certificate to work.
That's correct, yes.
And how many, do you know how many you've had go through that?
I'm not sure how many current enrollment, but I can definitely, it's full class. So
It's wonderful. Community
they're
work to be
asking
under.
for it next year too,
Yeah.
so we're just trying to secure funding to ensure we can keep it going.
Yep, and I love that they can stay here and get a job later if they.
Yes.
And then the distinguished school rating, I know that is a huge turnaround and very exciting about that. Obviously a challenging year in many different ways, but it really looks like you guys are prepped for a great 2027. I just want to thank you and your team. All good. Yep. Thank you. All right, we got quarterly update.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Ben Davison. I'm the assistant engineer for BDOT at the Warranty Residency Office. Working as with my direct supervisor, but currently out visiting his grandkids and extended family up at the end. So for this quarterly report, I want to announce that winter weather has passed. I'm happy to be out of winter, and that was a memorable snow, but a tough one to deal with, and appreciate everyone working with us as far as either broadcasting or talking to your friends and family about how to either avoid or safely drive in winter weather. So,
And when we get a late April snowstorm, we'll blame you for jinxing
now,
it.
Yes.
never here, right?
Or May, late May.
They have occurred before. Luckily, they don't stick around too long. After March 1st, you're
That's true.
without that. But I wanted to announce that BDOT recently participated in Work Zone Awareness Week last week, which again for the week of April 20th, with a focus on safe action, save lives, urging drivers to slow down, avoid distractions on work zone and safety regulations on the road. As we walk into summertime maintenance, our summertime maintenance activities are going to start changing to where we're going to start mowing, Paving season's already begun. It's a great time for us to start pitching some roads and accumulating some sand, sand and debris through the winter months. Please be aware of those work activities ongoing and avoid distractions wherever possible. Also be on the lookout for work zones not only on the primary roads and high volume secondaries, but also our low volumes and gravel roads. We've got a lot of broadband services going in currently, so normally on a very low volume road, you may never see a work zone, except for maybe minor grading, but we've definitely got some work going on some of those low volume roads this summer. This construction season, we plan to resurface 6 miles using surface treatment on secondary roads, and we plan on resurfacing 13.3 miles on a few secondaries, and then primaries including 231 and 211, which are actually being paved right now. On our last monthly report, we got an update from our structure and bridge section on the bridge deck replacement for 618 Holland Road. Unfortunately, I need to report that replacement is going to be delayed until summer of 2027. My understanding is that the availability of steel is delaying those materials getting in our hands, which is affecting not only this bridge but several other bridge projects in the state. The 0.4 miles of Route 6.6 Horton Hollow Road has been in partnership just recently, I believe just as recent as last week. That road will continue to settle. If you've ever seen very, very fresh tar and chip when we go from transition from gravel to hard surface, a lot of times we get some more stored and some excessive gravel. We'll continue to monitor that as it settles. And it's likely we'll run a sweeper truck through there to reclaim any gravel that didn't necessarily stick to the tar. The preliminary engineering phase for 615 Turkey Ridge Road will start this fiscal year. Of course, we're going to update the secondary 6-year plan this evening. But PD phase for 615 will start this year. Construction is planned for 2028. In the permitting side of our house, we have 57 land use permits that have been issued to Offense Broadband, and their subcontractor SNN that are working throughout the county, but most currently they're on Battle Mountain Road, Straddle, and Horton Hollow. And that's all of the main updates that I have from this past quarter, but I'll be happy to take any questions, concerns, or comments.
Thanks a lot. I had a question. I sent a note to David Jenkins, a local VDOT shop, not too long ago, and I think the subject line of my email to him was a killer tree, and it was one of these ash trees that went from somewhat alive to dangerous, it seemed, overnight. And as always, I want to thank your local team for getting on that immediately. And related, I just want to know if you have sort of a broad or regular plan of going around certain of these secondary roads and just removing trees in sort of organized way. Because I mean, every time I drive on here, it's all roads. Route 622, for example, I see yet another tree, and I don't mind calling your team, but I just wonder if there isn't a better way to address those, and if there's a plan to do so.
Yes, sir. So certainly for interstates, primaries, and high-volume secondaries, we're doing, we ride those roads weekly for all things maintenance, but trees included for sure.
Okay.
We've had a pretty comprehensive review of all the primary roads. Secondary roads and gravel roads included, where our right-of-ways are narrower. Quite often it becomes a question of, okay, is it on the right-of-way or is it off on private property? Ash trees also present a bit of a, they're more difficult to nail down because when they go to die, they turn into a sponge and they're very, very brittle. And so it's not often you'll see them actually lean before they fall. They just to the park. The short answer is that any and everyone guys that are out on the road, I implore them to use either 1-800-4-ROAD or make their contacts through Ford, local government, whoever that might be, because there's thousands of eyes on the road beyond just the few that we have to make necessary. But yes, sir, working backwards from the highest volume to low volume, we are reviewing those trees as
Okay.
presented to us. But to find everyone that is
Fine.
a chance,
Yeah.
for sure, yes, sir.
And my only other question, and you touched on it briefly, but I wonder if you could expand a little bit. Early on in the All Points broadband construction effort in Rappahannock County, there seemed to be at least some hint of maybe a permitting bottleneck on your side of that equation. I just wonder if you could comment on the efficiency with which those land use permits are being issued to All Points broadband, because obviously we can't have bottlenecks in that project to the extent we can limit them.
Yes, sir. Yes, so for permitting purposes, the biggest strategy that we work with all different types of permits is, especially when there are so many being applied for, is your bonding capacity as well as your cadence of issue a permit, complete the work, inspect the work, close the permit, in which that bond would then be released for more projects. With such a large project, I know that all of the APB and other fiber companies are struggling with bonding capacity limitations. With that said, we have monthly calls, if not weekly calls with APB, either looking at permit status of ones that are under review or ones that are ready to close out.
Good.
At least at this time, though, Rappahannock, we have not completed any of those permits yet. I expect some that were started early in the wintertime should be coming available very soon.
And since, out of fairness to you, are you getting from All Points broadband generally what you need in terms of cooperation? Can you comment on that? I want to make sure that both parties are playing together well, so to speak.
Yes, sir. So what's helpful with APB is them and their installer, SNN Communications. They keep us up to date on what roads they're working on so that we can help them with troubleshooting either line placement or traffic control. Chris Cockett, I think Tim Ennis with their APB group have been very transparent with us on the good, bad, and ugly, and to make sure that we can get an effective broadband project for counties.
Okay, and we'll continue, I know our county administration will continue to be in touch with All Points and similar with you, and if on either side there's anything we need to do to keep that relationship sound and the permits flowing, please call on us to intervene. Yeah.
I can very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? The only other thing I had mentioned earlier about the accidents report that I asked to get from dispatch, and from January 2025, so a year ago, to basically April 10th, there's been 8, and now I understand that ACPI is accident reported with personal injury. Basically, I think from Hume Road up to the top of Chester Gap. So I really would like to look at that again and make sure that the speed needs to be where it is. And I know you're looking at the passing lane already, so it just doesn't seem to be getting better, and the speeders seem to be going faster.
If nothing else, it's a tough mountain pass, and we'll review that from the section there requested, as well as the guardrail and passing lane on the mountain. It's very much a balance act between what is available, what can be used by the motorist, but if it's problematic, it's not something we can take.
I appreciate you looking into it and look forward to hearing back.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, at this point, we go into public comment, and just to make sure we're all on the same page, we are here to accomplish the business of local government for the sake of our citizens. We want to hear from our citizens, and this public comment period agenda item provides that opportunity. When speakers are called forward by the chair, please state your name and district. We also ask that your comments are limited to 3 minutes in order to provide equity to all speakers and to ensure our meeting is reasonable in length. If you have more information than can be summarized in 3 minutes, please provide leave-behind materials for the board's review. The chair will ask you to conclude your remarks if the time has elapsed. If you have questions during the session, you may ask for clarification from your board member or county administration staff after the meeting is adjourned. All right, public comment. Anyone wishing to speak? Yes.
Good afternoon. In the Williams Hampton District, I'm going to just share a few vagrant thoughts with you all. The courthouse. I've always been fond of the idea of a basement, and amid my vagrant thoughts late at night, the question I will propose to you all is to look into the possibility of having a basement that is also a storm shelter. We have gone through a windstorm recently that wasn't as bad as we expected it to be. I was in the Castleton Big Theater the night of the derecho. I won't recommend that to anybody. It was interesting. And we've had hurricanes come through, we've had a tornado or two. It might be interesting to see if we can find a way through FEMA. FEMA has programs that they run through the states, and there is a Virginia Department of Emergency Management office that deals with the idea of having public storm shelters. So, you know, if we can get a few bucks from FEMA or from grants, why not give it a try? Another vagrant thought, the meals and lodging tax, I see that you're going after the idea of tax penalties. I think it's an excellent idea. Madison County recently had a very bad situation with a restaurant that had to go under. And I think we could try to get people to stay on the straight and narrow. And last, speaking of Madison County, this month's Northern Virginia, I got it because it said adventure getaways. It's all about climbing mountains and things like that I don't want to do. But on the same pages with all of that stuff, mostly about Pennsylvania and West Virginia, by the way. Madison County. Come to Madison for the hiking, history, arson, scenery, fishing, festivals, breweries, wineries, and more. Stay in a B&B, cabin, camper, RV, lodge, vacation, rental house, tent, or even a yurt. And then they have a list of festivals. This year they're going to have a Virginia Fantasy Festival. There's fireworks. There's Gray's Mountain Music Festival and the Taste of the Mountains Main Street Festival. This is not the biggest ad in the world, but it is an ad. And it's on a very prominent page where a lot of people like me would pick up Northern Virginia magazine. So I hope that Rappahannock can someday soon have more telling people how much we are worth visiting. So that's the end of my vagrant thoughts.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks.
I'm Steph Ritter from the Wakefield District. Glad to see you guys. Thank you for all you do. Not surprisingly, I'm supporting the 1 cent increase in taxes. I've realized that the property tax is regressive, but it's really the only tax we have to provide for the schools. And I just, you know, I guess you all have been looking into every corner. Where do you find some other way to increase our revenue? And it's so hard to find, but we need to provide our kids with schools where the elementary school roof doesn't leak, where the HVAC system works, and where teachers are paid at competitive wage. Also wanted to add to the list of trade accomplishments. I just found out that someone who graduated from Rappahannock High and then went on for 2 years to Laurel Ridge just got a job as a linesman for REC, which is, that is a very well-paid job, and it takes a lot of skill and bravo. It's just, so there are many other alternatives to four-year colleges. And then I have 3 points. My second is that we do need a new courthouse. And this one is clearly dangerous to judges, to witnesses, to juries, and especially to disabled people if you've ever tried to come up that piece of equipment there. And if you want to be unannounced, there's no way, but it takes forever and it's really freaky in that. But on the other hand, we may not need all the bells and the whistles that the judges think are necessary. I haven't seen too many criminals working in the parking lot outside, and I'm not sure how much safer an indoor. I always feel less safe in an indoor parking lot, but maybe that's because I'm used to being outside. That said, I'm not sure we have to spend all the money that's being requested while providing what's absolutely needed. And the real reason I'm here is to support an ordinance that Mr. Goff and Mr. Curry are developing with regards to berms on private property where people like to shoot. Because I know of one person who is terrified by her neighbor, and with good reason. The berm is insufficient, and it poses a real danger to her and to the person who farms for her. And I just can't see any good reason for that. Anyway, so if you support the ordinance, I think they know what a sufficient berm might be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Margaret Bond from the Piedmont District, and I too want to add some comments about the courthouse project. But first of all, I want to thank all the Board of Supervisors for that great open house, and County Administrator, open house you put on last month to give the public a chance to have some meaningful input into the plans, ask questions, see the site. I thought it reflected a tremendous amount of effort on your part, and I found it very beneficial. I was greatly dismayed at the critical and dismissive reaction of the circuit judges, Plowman and Fisher, towards this effort. Right before the rollout of the open house, I felt the comments were insensitive and unrealistic in terms of the budgeting parameters that the county is trying to keep to, and simply inferring a demand that the county return to a previous project that was greatly more expensive also, I think, reflects ignorance on their part of the Rappahannock County values and needs of county residents. You might also say the same thing about the after-the-fact comments of the court clerks. Not that they were insensitive, but they might have been more helpful if the comments had been made before the considerable effort and expense made to modify the courthouse plan. To forestall being blindsided by such belated criticism again, I propose that the Board of Supervisors appoint a courthouse steering committee to review current plans against these criticisms before more money is spent on redrawing courthouse plans. Such a steering committee, each member could be empowered to speak for the interests of the group it represents, such as one or other of the circuit court judges, an attorney either from Rappahannock County or one from out of town. There seem to be a lot of out-of-town attorneys here. A representative with a law enforcement and security background, court clerk, and a Board of Supervisor representative, and one or two representatives from the county at large, just to represent people or to make sure that the number of voting members is an odd number. Such a steering committee could be responsible for initiating and agreeing on what should be any changes and modifications to the current plans. Each member would have one vote, and only the items approved by a majority of the committee would be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors for consideration. So you're not constantly having to go back and forth to the architects. And in keeping with my belief that you don't propose a job to do without volunteering to be a part of it, I volunteer my efforts to whatever it could be, whether it's draft terms of reference for such a committee, take notes, minutes, whatever. Final comment. We don't need to be wedded to this one current courthouse plan. We have a nice looking courthouse on Courthouse Road. We don't have to put a monument or a palace that matches this particular facade in the same place. Yet alternatives are possible. Please consider, you can Google this, Marshall, Madison County, North Carolina, great project, all the bells and whistles you need, $3.8 million. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Hensley.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see him.
Can you come through?
No, that's fine, I just didn't see you.
I'm in the Stonewall Hawthorne District. While I do not live on the section of Castle Mountain Road, which is currently under review for paving, I'm against the paving of the road. I've lived on that road my entire life and I'm comfortable with it as is. The paving will increase through traffic. It will increase housing development and vehicle speeds. The paving will also have to take property from the landowners in order to widen and to straighten out some of the sharp curves of that road. I fail to see why the road needs to be paved at this time. Recently, fiber optic cable was laid alongside the road. There was no discussion, no advance warning to residents. Suddenly, our road was blocked. No one on site could tell us what was going on or why it was happening. I called the county administration. For me, went unanswered. When they marked the pedestal location directly on the edge of the main farm entrance, I had to jump through hoops to get a supervisor to actually come out on site and speak to me. When I told him I didn't need the pedestal on that side, I didn't need it for my farm, had no use for it, he told me that the county was telling him to put the pedestals there in another location so that when my farm was turned into a housing development, the pedestal would be there to support all the houses that would be built. The internet cable and the paving will certainly open up now the possibility of development along that road, and that seems to be the county's plan. While the cable installation turned into a fiasco of trespassing and blocked public and private roads, paving will be worse during the construction. I know this because I used to work for BoardDocs under various job titles and districts. I know how they work. I also don't understand the timing of installing fiber optic cable immediately alongside a road, which will now have to be dug up as the road is widened and paved. Now, I was told, and I do not have a source of this data, that the road did not support school buses. Well, when I grew up there were 2 school buses that ran that route. Decades later, my children rode on a school bus on that road. I'm unaware of any school bus accidents on that road, but it seems that for 50 years or better, that road could support school bus travel. Now it does support big package trucks that come through on almost a daily basis, an occasional garbage truck, and very occasionally even tractor trailers come through and do not seem to have a problem. So that's one of the reasons I do not see the need for construction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Dan Gleason. I'm a Sperryville resident. I just would like to talk about the late fees for meals and lodging taxes. I appreciate seeing that on the docket today. Thank you. No problem with paying meals and lodging taxes. I understand that the money goes where it needs to go. The late fee is 10%, which is double what it is for state sales tax, sales tax for late. So I think that's just I mean, it's a lot for a small business that is already tough in this county to operate. You know, you guys figure out what the right move is to make, but it should be way lower than that. You know, if it's not, you know, at least on state levels of 5%. I would also say that, you know, there should be a flat fee of, you know, for the first 5 days or so, because accidents happen, miscommunications happen, and it shouldn't be a detriment to the business for, you know, just having a couple days late. You know, delinquency after that is understandable, but just right off the bat. So that's all.
Good
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Holly, lovely to see you. Okay, you won't hear from me anymore after today until like February. And I sort of put some numbers out, and there's some copies back there for other people. In Gilman Piedmont District, wrap tax free. I'm just going to give you a few of the numbers that are on here. So this year we did 139 returns, which is almost double what we did last year. The average adjusted gross income was $61,000, almost $62,000. This number is not going to sound very impressive, but it really is. So the fees that we save taxpayers were about $34,750. Those fees they did not have to pay somebody to do their return. So we had a few returns, and the ranges are on here, the refunds and so forth. We actually had one return that is such an outlier, I didn't put it here, but this person was going to get $2 back from the state. And so that person had paid $200 to get their return done, or they would not have done their return at all altogether. Okay, but the big number that most people really like is this year our total refunds, state and federal, was $201,822. So that goes direct, you know, people say, well, people would have gotten those refunds anyway, even if they hadn't used wrap tax free. That's not really the case. Our experience, first of all, they would have had to pay somebody to do it, so they would have lost that value. But we also, in doing taxes with people, we often come across situations where the prior year return has not been done accurately. And so the individual has not gotten all of the credits that they should have. We also had this year 11 prior year returns, which is more than we usually have. One of them was for someone who had 5 years of prior taxes. And I think what happened is the word kind of got out that we were not going to, and I'd say, why did you pay your taxes? That we were saying, okay, let's solve this problem. And in some cases, they got refunds that helped them deal with other kinds of debts. So we think it was a pretty successful year. I have a list here of many, many partners who helped us a lot. Washington Baptist hosted us. Florida Association, Rappahannock, Benevolent Fund, Food Pantry, DSS, and others did outreach. RAPCE was our fiscal agent. Northern Piedmont and the Lights Fund gave us a little bit of money to support, you know, basic office expenses. AARP provides secure technology and so forth. But the most important people are those volunteers. Catherine Reinbold, Bill Miniger, Lynn Consola, Steve Spencer, Francie Schroeder, Ian Bridges, Bill Perclusi. They all were really critical in making this happen and really doubling our return to the system. So, if any of you were inspired to help us out with taxes, that would be great. Or, for next year, let your friends and family know this really works. You know, you don't appoint. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your service on that front. Thank you for your service. It's great.
Good afternoon, Gail Crooks with Rappahannock County Department of Social Services. I just want to mention 2 things. One, I just want to do a PSA a little bit. That there is, I hear it locally and I've also heard it regionally, about people concerned about applying for public assistance for a variety of reasons. Either because they feel that they will no longer be eligible, they feel that the requirements will be too difficult and they're going to get denied anyway, or that their information will be shared outside their local Department of Social Services. So we just want to make sure that people understand that their information does not leave the local Department of Social Services. we also want them to understand that, yes, there are policy changes and some program changes, and I encourage you not to let that dissuade you from applying or from renewing the benefits. Those are there so that we are helping, neighbors helping neighbors, and us as a community helping get through some hard times, some difficult times. So please do not hesitate to apply. And if for some reason you do apply and you receive a denial, don't hesitate to reapply if something even minorly changes. Your application will be given full consideration again. And if we can't directly assist you, we will try and connect you to resources that might be available. So please do not hesitate to apply to the public assistance programs or to complete your renewal packages. And if you ever have a question or concern, please call the agency and we'll be happy to work through whatever question you have or concern that you have. The second item I wanted to share, after thanking everyone so much for being so supportive for Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month and great attendance at Sperry Fest and coming by and saying hi. Next Tuesday, we are in partnership with the Rappahannock Rural Health Network. We are hosting a vaccine clinic at 17 Leggett Lane, where you will check in at Rapid Home, and then the vaccines will be actually administered up in the Department of Social Services agency in a private room. So it is from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. There are flyers. They will be on several Facebook pages, whether it's at Rapid Home's Facebook page, our agency's Facebook page, Agents Together. We will also, I have some available if anyone wants to grab one right now. So there's a QR code for pre-registration. Pre-registration is encouraged, but you can also walk in. The target audience is those 60 and over, but if you're an adult and need a vaccine, you will not be turned away. But it is not a free clinic. Just want to make sure people are aware that vaccines that are being offered include COVID, pneumonia, RSV, tetanus, shingles, and hepatitis B. And I'm out of time, so let me just say, if you do need a vaccine, though, and you think you do need some assistance with the payment, please do contact DSS. We will look for a way to help and to make sure you get the vaccine you need, at least for COVID and RSV. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we have several people on Zoom. I'll open public comment up to Zoom. And again, it's 3 minutes. If you wish to speak, please raise your Zoom hand. All right, not seeing any Zoom hands, I'll go ahead and close public comment. We are at the consent agenda and
Madam Chair, I'll put forward a motion that we adopt the consent agenda as it's presented here.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Mr. Curry, you want to update us on the appointments, please?
There are several appointments listed in this agenda packet today for terms that expire at the end of June, beginning of July, in that time frame. So these are just advance notices required by your policy. So the first one is for the Recreational Facilities Authority. There are two members whose terms will end on June 30th. I've contacted both and asked them to express their interest back through an application for reappointment if they're interested. You might recall there are several bodies that your policy authorizes me, directs me to advertise vacancies automatically. This is one. So if you would rather I not advertise in the local newspaper, you'd have to take action to tell me not to do that. So that's the first. Any questions, thoughts on that? Okay. Second is Water and Sewer Authority. Those terms come due at the end of July. Ms. Woodard has informed me that she is not intending to seek another term. I believe Mr. Crafton is. I've not received applications for these either. This will be advertised in the newspaper unless I hear otherwise from the board. and I plan to do that during the month of May. And then lastly, you have 2 positions on the planning commission from the Jackson and Piedmont districts. That's Mr. Atkins and Mr. Sisk. Their terms are coming up at the end of around July 2nd. And so I've reached out to both of those and asked them to contact their board members, submit an application for appointment if they're interested. And so I will be advertising this one as well, unless otherwise directed by the board.
Looks like we're advertising.
I think that's just good practice, especially with so many.
That's it.
Okay. Going into old business, the first item is the Chester Gap Volunteer Fire Department Paid Provider Program update. I do at this time want to read a statement. I don't think that anyone would accuse me of shying away from the issues faced by this board over my 6+ years as the Wakefield District Supervisor. It is no secret that I am an active member of the Flint Hill Volunteer Fire and Rescue Department. I wanted to help my community, so I took the classes, and I've been an EMT since 2024. I am currently in the advanced EMT class that started in January, along with, I believe, 12 other Rappahannock volunteers. I care deeply about doing what is best for my district and the entire county, and I greatly appreciate and value having a say in what is done on important issues we face. In this case, I believe strongly that my work with Flint Hill and could create an appearance that I have a conflict of interest in this matter. And I do not want this board's decision here, or work more generally, to be deemed less trustworthy by Wakefield residents or others in Rappahannock County. So to avoid even an appearance of a conflicted vote and to maintain public confidence in our work, I'm going to abstain from discussing or voting on this matter. This is the first time in my 6+ years on the board that I have felt the need to recuse myself, and I do not expect it will be necessary again anytime soon. But it is my honor to represent the Wakefield District. Thank you for allowing me to do that, and Mr. Settle, I'm going to let you guys take it on.
Gary, do you mind?
Vice Chair.
Thank you. Debbie, thank you for that. So the good news is that I represent a district that is right in the center of the county. So I have no conflicts or possible conflicts. And my position, I think, is easy, clear, easy articulated and clear. And I responded, and I believe everyone here was copied this morning, I responded to a citizen who contacted us about the Chester Gap situation, and I took some time to respond. I just wanted to read that response because it summarizes my position on this issue, and I think it at least sets the stage for Supervisor Settle to lead us on your recent discussions with Warren County and other interested parties. I am the chair of the Public Safety Committee, and we've already drawn a line in the sand with the Chester Gap question vis-a-vis Warren County in the Public Safety Committee context. For me, the problem now that we're facing is, number one, Rappahannock County taxpayers have been covering Warren County's share of the Chester Gap Paid Provider Program since mid-2025. And despite repeated efforts from our board over an extended period of time to get the Warren County folks to the negotiating table to work toward a meaningful and equitable solution, we are no further along in this process than we were many months ago when Warren County dropped its support for this paid provider program at Chester Gap. I want to be clear, I deeply value the leadership of Chief Brown and Kevin Williams, the leadership they provided, and respect them both a lot and like them both as people, but I am totally puzzled why this increasingly feels like a one-way discussion from our side with no reciprocal acknowledgement from Warren County of either one, the urgency of reaching a new bilateral agreement, or two, the financially inequitable nature of the arrangement under which we have been operating, including glossing over the fact that both Rappahannock County and Warren County would realize significant cost savings if we could hatch a new agreement that is in the mutual interest of both parties. Put simply, we have shown great patience in Rappahannock County by trying hard to give the Warren County Board of Supervisors the time and the space needed to come together and join us in a meaningful renegotiation of the agreement. But to me at least, and I'm only speaking for myself and my constituents, there is no real evidence that I have seen of a heartfelt commitment from the Warren County side to do this. And in the meantime, Rappahannock County taxpayers, including those who I represent in the Hampton voting district, are footing the bill for the Chester Gap EMS program, which presents us with an untenable situation that cannot continue indefinitely through 11th hour stopgap funding commitments from Warren County. We need a real agreement, and we needed it months ago. And I appreciate you indulging me. Thank you.
Madam Chair. I'm not going to be redundant in what I covered in the last meeting about the efforts of the Public Safety Committee, and my colleague, Mr. Whitson, laid it out very clearly. Could not have said it any better. I'll give you a few details that might bring some value of understanding where we're at today, or at least how I see it as a Piedmont District representative, and asked by the Public Safety Committee to work alongside the chair to try to tease out the facts or possibilities or opportunities, probably the best way to describe this, to support Chester Gap. And, you know, only being on the board since January and monitoring it from the chief seats prior to that, sitting out in the audience and trying to pick up in, some of the key components of how we got in this situation, I can tell you I was probably one that thought, well, where does the board really want to go with this one, prior to me getting on the board, but now being privy to some of the deep conversations and the hard work of Chester Gap and leadership there and this board, we never wavered from us committing to making this work at Chester Gap. But you got to have a partner. And I won't go down that road. I think Mr. Whitson has said it very clearly. And to be quite honest with you, I've been frustrated from the beginning in January until now, and not so much with the players, other than the cooperation and or the opportunity to sit down with Warren County officials and explain this situation and try to come up with a resolution. We've always wanted a cost-effective and sustainable model, and we think that Chester Gap built that. Kudos to Chief Brown, President Williams, other members of the fire department who might have been involved in that to get us through a tough time. So I think we were obligated to be in their corner, but it just made sense. Chester Gap's a complex place, and we've talked about that. If you're from Chester Gap or you've worked there or what have you with the fire department volunteer, you understand the challenges there. And I think this board truly understands that. We've been committed from the beginning. But I will tell you, up until I think we had a meeting scheduled for last Thursday, I believe, Madam Chair, and I probably shouldn't be addressing you because you recused yourself, but I think it was last Thursday, and we were eager to get to that meeting with the right people at that, and trying to maybe a possibility to take the next step and see some daylight or at the end of the tunnel. On my way there, I was advised the meeting was canceled. And there's some complexities with that, not with this board or with the eagerness for us to get to the table, but some challenges that Warren County has to work through. That's, it's caused a problem for us where we would like to go, but that's their problem from this point on. And quite frankly, every time we would meet, we necessarily didn't have the right people at the table from the other county. And we've got, these are big decisions, and I think Ms. Comer said so elegantly about the three-legged stool. Public safety is one of those. It's only a piece and part of the budget, but it's a huge piece and part of the budget. It may not be from the financial impact compared to other things. as I say, dollars are hard, and we realize that. But we're at a crossroads right now, and it would be, my position to the rest of the board is, we have exhausted efforts. And there's so many that we didn't even discuss last month that I got to thinking about as, phone call here or reach out here, just to try to facilitate something, light a fire or what have you. So I don't know what else we can do. We can't, as Mr. Whitson said, keep pushing this month by month. We have a responsibility to the citizens of Rappahannock County. We're asking them for a tax increase. We're asking them for more money to make this county thrive and meet our bills and meet our obligations. And that's an important piece of Chester Gap. And listen, I'm very close to Chester Gap, that family there. I'm sure I will get a couple calls about this. And I've gotten previous calls and tried to lay out the hard work that's been facilitated. And I'll tell you, the folks at Chester Gap are the ones that breathe life into this and continue to breathe life into it. Probably to the day they think we got another chance. This is now business in the best interest of the county. If we walk out of here today, however this turns out at this meeting, when this comes to a vote to move on, we have a plan in place. We've challenged and I guess we've asked our folks to go to work and get that plan in place should we come to this day. If today is the day. In my mind, I've been really close to all these conversations and offline calls, even to the day before that, our last meeting. And then has anything changed? Is there any possibility? And then we get new, voluminous amount of information dumped on us. It goes in a different direction. Folks, we can't do business like that, or at least I don't feel like I can represent my constituents in the best interest. And I'll tell you, if you ask somebody from the other side of the county, they say, well, why are our tax dollars going to Warren County anyway? They don't understand that and I get that. I probably say the same thing. But as you explain these efforts that Chester Gap took to get us through one of the most difficult times any of us will probably live through, COVID, it made it happen. What a creative way to do that, and it worked. And for Warren County not to see that, I don't have an answer for that. But when I explain that to the constituents, they understand why that program was positive. But we're in a different place now, and I'm going to stop there and certainly will answer any questions that my colleagues might have.
Also, can I just ask, the Thursday's meeting was canceled, did they give an explanation why?
Yes, it was very simple. How it was relayed to me is that the need to cancel, we can't take the meeting. Same answer of saying that we've had in the past, and this was a meeting that we pushed and pushed and pushed, and because we kicked this deadline down the road several times. And I will say, this is not Chester Gap's fault. This wasn't them. They were ready to make, and these are men and women that work every day. They got to leave their families, they got to or leave their jobs, they got to take leave. It takes away quality time for them. I don't work making work adjustments. But these are the folks in Warren County in our positions and I'm sure their plate is full, and they're getting an earful from both sides in many different areas at a higher rate maybe than we are. I think we do pretty good compared to some of the stories I've heard, challenges they have there. But that meeting was just canceled, and it didn't surprise me to be honest.
I don't have any questions. I'll first express my sincere gratitude to Chief Brown and the leadership there at Chester Gap, because you are absolutely right. They were innovative in a time that called for innovation, and they put together, as you said, created a fantastic model. So some of this is, you know, it's not their fault. I want to make sure that I won't talk to her since she's not supposed to be discussing it, but I do want to at least acknowledge the hard work that the Wakefield District Supervisor has done. I'm sure this is, you know, this is tough, especially when you want to jump in and help to recognize that perception could, she should probably not take part in this conversation, but I do want to acknowledge her hard work. My colleague, Mr. Whitson here, you know, he said we've drawn the line in the sand. We've drawn the line in the sand. I've not even been here 3 full years, and we've drawn the line in the sand over and over and over. There's only so much beach left before we reach water's edge. And I feel like, especially since January, from where I sit, and the we I'm speaking of is Rappahannock County, the 5 of us, and our representation of our constituents in the county and the needs at large. We have been clear, we have been direct, we have been patient, and we have been respectfully professional. And I feel like we are now at a point that our constituents are looking at us like, what is next? What is next, and what works long term? And that's where I'm coming from today.
Any other questions? I'm going to make a recommendation today that we, and if you don't know, my colleague, Mr. Whitson, chairs the Public Safety Committee. I think he mentioned that earlier in one of our previous meetings a couple months ago, maybe even longer now, because we continue to keep that date down the road. We made a recommendation that we would move forward with, because we have a stopgap in the budget with regards to moving this program to Flint Hill. This is not where we got to go back to the table. We planned this, or even before I came on the board. What's the worst case scenario? So we're prepared for that, and I thank the board for that, and Mr. Yule and Mr. Curry as well. We were hoping we didn't get to this day, but I'll make a recommendation that we accept the Public Safety Committee's recommendation that, and I apologize, I don't have that date, but I believe it was at our last meeting, if I'm correct. And that we move forward with moving the program to Flint Hill. And it's my understanding that Warren County has, at their last meeting, continued funding until the end of June, for months of May and June, which should give us time to have a transition. And I know we charged Mr. Curry and staff to start have a plan in place, and I don't know where that's at, but I hope we're well on the way there. They've been working hard, hoping that maybe we could go the other direction, but it's my recommendation that we move forward and move it forward the program. Let me find it.
I'll second that motion with gratitude of Mr. Settle for you jumping in your early days on our board to try to shepherd this renewed agreement through. I appreciate your effort.
I'd just like to say before we call for a vote on that motion, how much I appreciate the work done by the fire company there. And you know, none of this means there's not support coming from our board for continued efforts. You know, this is just one aspect, and I really appreciate the hard work they've done to do all this.
Again, I'm gonna be redundant here. John's right. I have never seen the tenacity, and I've been around for a little while, and some major projects and some huge hurdles. And yes, folks have a tendency to throw in the towel. That's not your people from Chester Gap. They're not built that way. And if I had to make a guess, this will make them just sit down and think even harder, you know, what's the next evolution in fire and rescue. And I've said all along, and we have studies and surveys to go back years, that one day we would be, this is a piece and part of it, it's not, maybe not laid out, we're going to be faced with the challenges of volunteerism not being at the level that we love and like and we appreciate and would love to continue. But the reality is, it's just, you know, it's a little slippage there. I hope that changes, but we're going to be in uncharted territory moving forward. And it might be 2 years from now, maybe 5 years from now, 8 years from now, who knows? But we've got to have a strategic plan. We've got to start taking little bites at this. So,
Yes.
Chester Gap deserves so much credit. They have educated us to a level that we take for granted, that they just live by that motto every day. So, really well said.
I think we should call for the vote since I'm confused.
Yeah, Mr. Curry, Mr. Goff, with her recusal, is there any reason why the chair can't call for the vote? Or should I call for the vote?
I can call, anybody can call.
Okay, I'll go ahead and just keep it clean. I'm capable of calling for a vote. So the motion was from Mr. Settle to the paid Chester Gap program to Flint Hill, following the recommendation of the Public Safety Committee. I seconded that motion. Thank you for your thoughtful comments. I'll go ahead and just do a roll call. Mr. Settle.
Yes.
Mr. Janot.
Yes.
Ms. Comer.
Aye.
I will vote aye. And Ms. Donahue, I believe, is abstaining. Thank you.
And if I could, didn't want to interrupt your train of thought before, there is an agreement mechanism attached to BoardDocs. It's an addendum to the earlier MOA that was adopted between the two parties. It's not clear to me whether I'm authorized to execute that. Mr. Goff has reviewed it. The Flint Hill folks have reviewed it. Mr. Stevens is, and I put it together. So it would be helpful for me to understand whether we're able to charge forward with that.
Mr. Settle, if you want to take a moment and review the draft MOA, I think that it would be useful if you're so inclined to put forward a motion on directing staff to execute that MOA.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I have reviewed that document prior to several times. I make a recommendation that we allow staff to move forward with the execution of the MOA as written.
I'll second your motion.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
You're okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Moving forward. Courthouse project. Continued discussion, and I see that Andrew is on Zoom.
Hello, everyone.
Hi there, can you hear us okay?
I can.
Excellent. So we don't have a presentation prepared, but it'd be good to recap just the last month or so. As board members are aware, you held your community outreach session, had a pretty good turnout, and it was nice to see Judge Plum and Judge Cup there, as well as several board members. A lot of people from the community came and reviewed various visual aids and saw the site that was staked out where the latest concept was proposed. Just preceding that, it's been discussed during public comment period. You received some correspondence from the judges concerned about a few aspects of the design, which is we've all discussed as concept. And so certainly have the ability to tweak design. I spoke with, and you heard from your clerks as well following that letter, which is not surprising to me that a clerk would fall in line with what their circuit court judges might have to say. And not that they don't have independent thoughts as well. That is, I think, normal. Mr. Moore and I and his team met via telephone and talked through, what do we do next? And I was pretty candid. I'm not really sure. I think we need to talk to the board, see what their thoughts were coming out of the public session, what their thoughts are having received the various correspondence. Mr. Moore came forward with some potential options to maybe solve some of the issues, and so he's here with us now, can answer questions of yours. I will be happy to as well. Ultimately, we need some sort of direction on where to go from here. Big picture. You could continue seeking to refine concepts until you find the Goldilocks version that fits everybody just wrong enough that everybody's equally upset or everybody right. Or you could, basically commit. We're going to do the project. Let's jump into the full design process, starting with schematic design, and refine the design as part of the schematic design process. So either of those main routes are available to you.
That's good. Question, there was a suggestion during the public comment that we form a steering committee that kind of work through some of the details of the courthouse. And this is my first time ever doing this, hopefully my last. And so I'm not sure what's typical. If that would be something, it seems like a lot of the kind of minute details, the design type stuff is difficult to do in this setting. And that a smaller committee might be useful, but is that something that is typically done?
Well, I mean, you have the state guidelines recommend a planning oversight committee, which the board formed. It is comprised of the judges and the clerks and the sheriff and the Commonwealth attorney and myself. And so, that worked through the programming for the use. What rooms are needed, what uses are needed for us. And then the architect takes all of that input and uses their magic to put it into a floor plan and elevations of what does it look like and which rooms are next to which other rooms. I'm not so sure. I'm sure citizens disconnected from the local system have valuable input. I'm not sure it's necessarily different than what the technical requirements of a project would be. And I think the board is well positioned to think about those subjective factors of how big do we really need 2 courtrooms and things like that. You've heard from your experts. The subjective legislative review, I really think, is right for the board. And if that needs to be a work session where you can roll up your sleeve for multiple hours, you can do that. But I think you've been there. And you met with the Planning Oversight Committee and you talked about, the programming, and then you've kind of pinched and tweaked and cut, and there was these comments about, how far you've cut and whether it was the right program. And I think the board came to the conclusion that you were at the right program. It's just how do we lay the spaces out to equally please everybody, or displease everybody, and in a way that's safe and effective and appropriate. And Andrew's an expert at this. I'm just a staff person over here. I'm sorry.
Ms. Carroll?
I can't decide if I'm about to chase a squirrel or not, so that's why I paused. To Mr. Geno's point, though, I know when I was part of a committee for a building built at Laurel Ridge, and while after the big stuff was done, our involvement was minimal. It was still, we were still engaged, and there were some helpful little nuggets that came. My favorite one, and it's very teeny tiny small, was the no offense, Andrew, but the architects kept insisting that our trades building part of it be carpeted. And we kept pushing back. No, we don't want carpet. So that's a small example of how maybe it's
I would view your role in that situation as similar to the Planning Oversight Committee here. You were one of the main practitioners, users of the building, as is in the case here, the judges and the clerks and the county attorney and sheriff. So your input in that scenario is probably very similar. You can form any number of committees, and I would argue what you're doing is just taking more time to get back around to ultimately what you as a board decide you want to do.
Right.
And we've discussed time is money, very literally with construction inflation.
I do agree with you there.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I would love it if somebody would show us a $4 million courthouse.
Well,
I would jump at that, and the $4 million courthouse that was mentioned during public comment was a temporary courthouse, and their larger courthouse was estimated at 14 to 20, and it looks like they're gonna end maybe at 60 million.
yeah.
So I would love that. It just looks like it's not realistic.
You and I did the same thing. I'm reading, they're planning an 80,000 square foot, and their temporary, was 4 million. And this says estimated cost 60 to potentially $98 million.
And we talked here when there were potential thoughts about expanding this building, that you would need a temporary layover space to allow you to effectively expand and renovate this building. And so you'd have to build this other courthouse building, and that sounds like kind of what that other locality might be doing. Which, when you add all that together, just doesn't make financial sense relative to building this standalone.
And for a fleeting moment, I'd use in the Augusta County, I believe it was Augusta County model. I thought a referendum posing two questions: do you wish to build a $20+ million courthouse in the town of Washington, or do you wish voters to build, a $5 million really nice Butler building out in 211 on an empty lot? And there were elements of that I thought were a good idea. In the end, it didn't get any traction, and I understand why. And I think this is the county seat, and all things being equal, I think the courthouse belongs here. We have, with all due respect to Margaret, who I really value, and good for her for coming up with the idea of a committee and then immediately volunteering to serve on it. That you taught me a lesson there. I'll remember that in the future when I come up with good ideas to at least offer to also help. I'm sort of done with mulling this over. I'm getting to a point where I think we do have to vote. I ran into one of the judges yesterday, and I did emphasize to that judge that I would greatly appreciate no more letters from judges, and I said that as respectfully, I think, as I had to say it to a judge. And the judge's response was, well, you all need to make a decision here because it seems like this is never going to happen. Of course it's going to happen. It has to happen. Mr. Settle has made some really compelling arguments about what would happen to local law enforcement if we lost judicial functions within Rappahannock County. Would not be good. It has an adverse cascading effect on our community. I like the direction we went on scaling down the building size and overall footprint. I think Ms. Struckman and Ms. Foster from the clerk's offices made a really good point about clerk's offices being prominent and public facing. I think that makes a lot of sense. To Mr. Curry's point, I think that sort of floor plan layout detail can be done without impaneling a committee, without us having to get into the weeds. I think we need to reach a decision on a plan, what we're going to authorize design work to commence for. And in my view, the design work should commence for, we'll say, the scaled down version that Glavian Homes put forward. My only remaining hesitation on that is this notion that we would lock ourselves into a building that would not allow for future expansion. So the one question mark that hovers for me is original plan, with, I believe it'd be 2 floors above grade, one subterranean. The subterranean floor always, the subterranean unfinished part of that concept always gave me comfort because I knew that looking forward it would allow us to expand. But I realized the dollars attached to that approach would basically reset the plan where we most recently landed. So I don't want to say I'm stuck between those 2 concepts. I prefer the smaller one, but would be remiss if I didn't say why it concerns me a little bit in light of the very valid comments from the 2 clerks in particular.
So absent the unfinished basement space, the revised concept actually has slightly larger square footage. It's 25,000 versus 24,000.
That's a good point.
It was just how the spaces are arranged. And it was a more efficient envelope, less wall, right? If you kind of squeeze it all into a box that is on 2 stories as opposed to 3 across the back when you had the walkout basement, if you will, then 2 floors.
Yeah.
And I know the town was quite sensitive to the view of the 2 stories above grade, Gay Street grade, because of the mass of the building or how it appeared.
Yeah.
And so the revised concept really spoke to those concerns, and I think from the citizen outreach day had drawn great appeal from members of town council and citizens who came by for what it looks like. It's just, I think there's a few tweaks that need to be made to make sure it's safe and as efficient as possible.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Andrew from Globbing Homes, I asked him sort of in my, Fountainhead, reading the Fountainhead approach, I said, well, as an architect, you still feel good about what we've basically forced you to come up with. I feel like we intervened on sort of the artistry side of architectural design through cost-cutting measures, which is our responsibility, but without taking it too far, I wanted to make sure that he could still stand behind that the design, the reduced cost design, and I believe he was pretty emphatic in saying he thought it still was a really great-looking building, so that was important to hear from the architect. And it sounds like citizens agree. So.
Mr. Sutter?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from Andrew as well. But I spoke with Andrew at the viewing here a couple of weeks ago, and we talked a little bit about the judge's concerns. And of course, the clerk's letters have not been circulated yet, and I put great value in their input as well. So first of all, I'd be interested in Andrew's response to some of the asks or concerns that the judges had, and if I recall correctly, and this was standing outside on a beautiful day, well, we could probably work with that. So maybe we're thinking that this may be nothing small in changes when you're building something, but if you could maybe address some of the judges' concerns. And the one thing I've always asked, and I'm coming in late on the ballgame with this, I guess John and I are, because there's a lot of conversation last year going through the designs, and it was really trying to play catch up. I've never really understood, the courtroom meeting on one level and then the clerks on another level. And I believe that may have been one of the concerns. And is there a way to convert that? So yeah, I think maybe Andrew.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that and answer any questions that I can. I think as an overarching statement, I think it's fair to say that there are a limited number of courthouse layout models that comply with the best practices and the courthouse facilities guidelines. The thing that really drives it is that separation of the circulation between the prisoners and the court staff areas and the public, and not having those populations cross each other so that they can access the different portions of the building. And so that's just one thing to bear in mind. Once having said that, there are various ways to stack and deploy the courtrooms and the clerks, and it's just a matter of weighing the relative merits of the resulting building against the cost implications and the site constraints. In this case, we have a sloping site, which lends itself to a lower level that is at least partially below grade, and that can be used in various ways. In our latest 2-level version, you have some portion of occupied space that is below grade. In the concept that we presented at the public meeting, you've got waiting areas for the courtrooms below grade, and then the courtrooms themselves have some natural lighting, which is great. The limiting factor on that level, of course, is the prisoner holding. You're basically keeping all the prisoners on one level, which is good in one sense, but it also means that you're bifurcating the plan, and it's very difficult to get. It's impossible to get the staff from one courtroom to the other without crossing the prisoner area, without going into the public area. So it's just a sort of a geometry problem. The comments we got from the judges about the relationship of the courtrooms to the judges' chambers and to each other, and to how they're accessing the balance of the building. We attempted to address in the sketches that we had sent it, and I think that Gary published. And of course, that opened a can of worms with the way the clerks viewed that as being a negative impact on their space. And I think their points are valid, but it is a trade-off, when you have a 2-level building, to try to balance one thing over the other. So then the third option, that we've been exploring, which is 3 levels, gets you back into that height question. One of the clerk's comments or suggestions was to explore an idea of stacking the courtrooms, so you can have courtrooms, the circuit courtroom and the larger courtroom, let's say, on one level and the JMDR on the other. There is a way you could do that, but it's going to make the overall massing of the building significantly taller, especially since both of those 4 levels now are courtroom levels. So you don't have the advantage of having just offices on one level that makes the floor-to-floor a certain dimension. The courtroom requires a higher floor-to-floor. So we're going to be potentially net taller than even the original design, the 3-level design, because in that original design we had clerk level, courtroom level, the clerk level being a lower floor-to-floor, courtroom level being a higher floor-to-floor. If we stack the courtrooms and have them both be above grade, then we've now got, courtroom level. So the building gets even much taller. I'm confident that we can make a beautiful building in whatever configuration. It's just weighing the various inputs at this point. Circling back to Gary's notion of kind of 2 paths forward, I do feel like that we could continue to iterate on the concept level and get closer and closer to a workable solution. Alternatively, we could just go ahead and launch the full service design services and get the ball rolling with that, and then basically work in the configuration of the building into the schematic design phase. We can put whatever parameters you want to around that, in terms of cost or size or whatever, but that would enable us to basically get the design moving forward and the actual timetable going for delivering the project. So hopefully that was helpful. If you have any more questions, I'm happy to try to address them.
Andrew, I appreciate that. I agree with Mr. Whitson and pretty much all my peers. I think we've talked this to death, and we're at a point that the tweaks that you and Mr. Curry and the planning oversight committee or whomever, may come up with. I would much rather spend money moving forward than spend money feeling like the duck that Donna talked about the other day, with underwater just going crazy when we're not getting anything done necessarily. So I don't know what we need to do, because I know this is discussion information, but I'm ready to move forward.
Well, I guess Andrew and I need to hear that you're ready to move forward. We'll bring to you at a public meeting the agreement documents with the costs and everything attached to it for the board to make that award. And the scope that goes with that would have to speak to, that the requirements in the schematic design phase to tease out some of these last remaining things.
So, Madam Chair, just so I understand, so if that document was put together, I mean, we'd still have flexibility. I heard you say we could tease out.
Yeah, so I mean, there are so many facets of the design that we have no idea. I mean, we haven't even talked about finishes or colors, or I mean, there's so many things, and we don't need the board involved in all those, but the big ones we'll definitely have involved.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of iterating on two, I think Andrew said we could iterate on two potential designs, and I don't like that idea. I think we need to go forward.
Okay. I'll go ahead and put forward a motion that we direct county staff of Lottie Homes to bring to the Board of Supervisors an agreement entered in the design phase for us to review and execute at the earliest opportunity, whether that requires a special meeting or at our next monthly board meeting. Recognizing, of course, that time is money.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
You're welcome. Talk soon.
All right. Regional fiber to the home broadband project discussion. Mr. Curry, anything?
There's really nothing that I have news to report. As anybody who's driven around, you've seen a lot of activity, and that's great. Did you answer any questions?
Yeah, that one question, I was going to bring this up during the BoardDocs conversation. I thought maybe I should wait for this time. I wondered if we've had any input from BoardDocs on mowing or on those pedestals. I grabbed around to look at the number of pedestals, and as the grass starts growing, it's going to be hitting.
I did have a conversation with the area headquarters superintendent who basically lamented all of the grading boxes. And they may end up having devices strapped to them, like some teleco boxes have, just to provide a little bit better visibility in critical areas. Mm-hmm. Many are in manicured areas or wooded areas that aren't moved, but some we don't want a mower running over them. Well, we don't. All Points really doesn't want that to happen.
Well, if they hit them before the fibers in there, it'd be a little easier. Yeah. No, I think that's going to be quite a task. To mow those.
Right,
that's not something I consider.
Yeah. Right speed gets theirs run over every year.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say about those pedestals, I know early in the process when I was naively worried about project details instead of actually just getting fiber. I lamented about the orange and white poles that we were seeing everywhere, and maybe I created a problem because I thought those were not something that people in Rappahannock County would like, and now people are complaining about the green pedestals. So I don't know. You can't win for losing, but at least they're green.
I think they're pretty.
I think they're green. They're not orange and white. So if we could get green poles of the size like the orange and white ones are, then I think we would hit it right on the mark.
I know Mr. Ennis has said that they will have to do something for some public.
And you did have a couple of questions from public comment. People wondering about, the fiber going right by their property and not getting a heads up that it's coming, and just wondering if there's anything And I think in general, people are happy, but should we be doing something different that says your road's about to get fiber?
I don't know that it'd be great if all points do that a little bit better. There's no way to do this without inconvenience, and when it's a very narrow road, there's probably more inconvenience because of vehicles being able to pass each other. I think that's pretty limited, and the instances when it would block traffic that's not alternating flow. And I don't think they probably have permits that would allow them to do that for a very long period of time. Regarding, there was a comment earlier about the road project coming afterwards, and so that's something the community will have to consider for the utility and VDOT for the next 50 years. Generally, the permits are to place the new fiber on the backside of a ditch. And generally, when the board is contemplating secondary road plans that were rustic, which means there's very little grading being done, very little widening being done. So likely not much of an impact to those utilities. They do it all the time now with copper telco.
They do seem to be cleaning up very well after the mess is made, so I'm happy about that.
And do we have citizens who are connected?
I'm led to believe that the first person's been connected, but I've not received any confirmation.
Thought that there'd be skywriting or celebration.
Well, those individuals would have to consent to being the poster people, maybe they don't.
Okay. Maybe that's a question for Mr. Innes that we could pose and just ask him, like, who's connected and where.
Yep. All right, going to move into General Assembly update, bills of interest. The one that hit my attention was the faith in housing.
Yes, that has a provision linked to it that I believe only makes it apply where public utilities are present or will be present. So it vastly reduces the impact on our community. Make sure that's the one I was thinking of.
And we still haven't heard anything on the collective bargaining.
No, so a number of some bills the governor's amendments were rejected, which means they're back on the governor's desk, which means the governor has the next step, the 22nd, I believe is the date, to veto it, sign it in its original form, or ignore it, which is the same as signing it in its original form. So the governor would have to take action to veto that original bill and others that are in a similar situation. The cannabis bill is in the same posture. So everybody is waiting to hear that. There are a number of these land use type bills that have been approved. Some they were approved in the General Assembly form, some were approved in amendments or substitutes from the governor, and they will affect local ordinances. Utility scale solar is one, where we allow utility scale solar, and our special requirements that applicant must meet to obtain a special exception. There's a long list. There's now prescribed list of what you can require for setbacks and a few of the things that our ordinance will have to come into line with that. There are a few others that will also need to align our ordinance. There was some correspondence from the Planning Commission chair suggesting, maybe it would be a good idea to come together, starting around the ADU discussion that the board had in an earlier meeting, and then you add all these on, and maybe it makes sense to have a joint meeting at some point in time, talk through all of the potential changes. I would recommend that you do that after the 22nd. And we'll any of those ones that are kind of hanging out there, because the cannabis bills, they have a zoning tie-in where localities can allow or disallow the retail side of that. And the locality can set the tax rate for that. So you'll the tax rate's not exactly a zoning matter, but you can zone them in or out or take other actions.
Do you know off the top of your head, and I know the chair is here, when the planning commission meets in June?
I don't know, it's off the head back in. Look.
So I would like to have a joint.
Sure.
Meeting the 17th.
Yes, 17.
Will not be in the state.
That would not be a good day, though. Good for you.
So why don't we?
And so a lot of these bills will be, become effective July 1. Others have delayed enactment, which takes pressure off. They're 27. But staff will start working on those items that we know are going to change, just to bring something to you. Some things are not going to offer a lot of options. You just have to write in what we have to write in. But others will have some options for the board and planning commission.
Okay. So why don't we challenge you to find a date that we can meet jointly, no earlier than June, because of the governor's vote. And then if June doesn't work, very early July.
Okay. And this is not dissimilar from the process the board and planning commission went through last year with the subdivision changes. And you didn't adopt those till several months into after they became effective. The state law will control regardless of what our ordinance says. So we'll want to catch up pretty quickly so people aren't confused, and so particularly our staff. So I will do that.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? The ADUs, that looks like that's going to be one of the primary things we need to change. And one of the interesting things on that is that nothing in the section shall apply to a locality that adopted an ADU ordinance prior to January 1st, 2026.
I think Art and I would argue that we have such an ordinance until somebody tells us we do not.
Well, it makes you wonder if there are other places where we see activity in Richmond that we should be adopting ordinances. They won't always put that caveat in there. I know sometimes they're going to tell us what to do, but
yes, and when you see things like that, or you see wording that says a locality may do this or that, it makes it very easy in a subsequent year to toggle the may to a shall and take that one sentence out. Yeah. So we need to be very careful that you have maybe a pass from this legislation. Next year, that paragraph can be removed and bang, you're back in.
Okay.
So it's a good way to kind of see you won the day, but maybe not the whole discussion.
I heard through the grapevine, and I don't know if Art stepped out, but he might know this, Gary, better than you, or if you do, great. I heard through the grapevine that there was legislation floating around that related to the redrawing of judicial districts. Does this ring a bell?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay. Because with our court oversight committee, I had raised a question, and I don't think Judge Plowman loved my question. But a citizen had asked me what I thought was a pretty interesting question, and it was, what would it mean for our courthouse if we belonged to a different judicial district? And I could see where the question was leading. You know, this is like are we like Loudoun County, or are we more like Page County, that kind of thing. But someone mentioned to me yesterday that there was discussion in the legislature about maybe reconstituting judicial districts, in particular ours, where at some point in the not too distant future we might be more aligned with counties that look more like us than with Loudoun. And that is, as this person said to me, keep that in the back of your mind as you go forward on your courthouse project, because it might be that, and I respect circuit court judges a lot, but it might be that we have a whole different set of judges, and maybe even in the future a resident judge, for example.
Maybe a resident judge to share with another locality. Where I was before, we hosted a judge that also sat in the smaller localities near.
Yeah.
I would argue that all localities in the state follow the same facility guidelines that we're attempting to follow. And so as time moves forward, what is acceptable is reviewed based on actions over time. And in 10 or 15 years, those guidelines will be a little bit different again, and whoever is designing them will follow whatever's on the books at that time.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's an interesting question here. I'm wondering what kind of, that would take place, what impact would it have on our decision making on the size and what we're doing here at our courthouse. I would argue maybe not that much difference because the caseload, that is what it is, and the security. That is an interesting question.
Yeah.
Some folks may think, well, we're in a different circuit. Courthouse doesn't need to be as big, and we don't need to. I think that'd be the case.
Ms. Comer, do you remember, I know we talked about this during the vote, no vote, yes days, about the potential for being in a different district, and there was a timeline that had to be done with, do you remember?
Oh, I cannot remember, but we
I'd
have,
like to follow what VTC just did, because I think that's a perfect
you
reason.
were reading my mind. While it may not have an impact on necessarily the needs of the courthouse, I do believe there's, I see it in the different organizations that I work with that are in, districts. So like there's a workforce district, there's a tourism district, and I'll just remind everyone, we were recently put in a new district was formed for tourism that better matched our personality, if you will. And that didn't happen just overnight. That discussion of that district and what would it look like if Culpeper, Rappahannock, Madison, if all of us were in this district instead of Northern Virginia, or instead of closer to Charlottesville, what would that look like? Those conversations started years ago. So we should look at that.
Try to find out if that conversation is happening. I'd like to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's HB 443 that looks like was seeking a study to review the maximum number of judges per district, I guess, speaking to the size. So if you put a cap on that, then the 443, it comes with, looks like it was approved.
Well, if we can get to be a part of the conversation, I think we should, even if it's just a resolution that says, we would like to do that.
Right.
All right.
Anytime, I'm sorry, it was just with Rappahannock, Fauquier, and Culpeper all building new courthouses. Well, I don't know, timing is everything.
Sure.
The only practical change that I would be aware of is if we had a resident judge, then that resident judge might have staff, and you might need a spot for that person. I can't foresee a future where that's going to happen here. If things are districted differently, I would guess the resident judge would travel to here from just a different place and not have this be.
Well, commuting here from Fauquier is more attractive than Loudon.
Oh, yeah.
Just saying.
I'm just from a building perspective and what we need to do for designing what rooms and things like that. I don't know that make a difference.
All right, anything else on the General Assembly?
I would just encourage you, read through them, and I will. But there are a few other ones that passed as well that will make changes, policy changes, like the FOIA one about agendas. You really already are doing that, so that's not a big deal. But there are thousands of bills, many of which we still don't have any idea about, that passed and are signed, and somebody's going to put up a report, and we're going to go, "Wow, I was in there too."
Well, thank you for keeping us up to date. Meals and lodging tax late payment penalties. Do you want to explain how this is layered?
Well, let me just first say you heard from a restaurant owner during public comment, and many of our restaurant owners have had the unfortunate experience of missing the due date for their meals or lodging tax. Well, the restaurants probably haven't missed the lodging tax, but those vendors have. And if you miss the due date, which is, I think, 20 days after the end of the period that the tax is accrued, so you have 20 days. The penalties are pretty steep, as provided for by state code and enacted by local ordinance. And in fact, the local ordinance is not as aggressive as it could be. But having heard from Mr. Gleason that he was the most recent restaurant that had the unfortunate occasion to miss the payment by a day, and saw what the penalty was, he was shocked. And I thought, well, the board may not be aware of what our current code says, what the state code says. And so I wanted to inform you about that. And so before I go through the words, let me just pull up the attachment to help you have an idea of a hypothetical scenario where somebody had $1,000 of meals or lodging tax due. The first thing that happens is if you pay your bill on time, you get to keep 3% of that collected tax, which is supposed to cover the administration of the tax process. So that's good, but if you don't pay on time, then you lose the 3%. So the first thing, all these fees, penalties are additive and compounded, as the code states. And so if you start out with your $1,000 tax obligation, you lose your 3%, so you're up to $1,030 that you owe. Then the 10% late filing. So for these taxes, there's a piece of paper you have to file that says, this is how much revenue we brought in from meals, and therefore we owe X amount of dollars, and here's the 3%. The late filing penalty is 10%. So the 10% pops on, that's $103, gets you up to $1,134. If you also didn't pay on time, so most people who don't file on time also don't pay on time, that's another 10%. The state allows you to charge more than that going forward. So it's $113 now on the running balance, so that's $1,247. And then after that, interest starts accruing at 10% per year, which if you pay a day late is really no big deal. So if somebody had a $1,000 tax bill, and they pay a day late, they all of a sudden find out they owe $1,247. And so if you multiply that 1,000 by a few for the larger restaurants, that can be a significant unexpected expense. Penalties are intended to make sure people realize they shouldn't do this. So, the question ultimately to the board is this structure consistent with your thoughts on how you should be encouraging the businesses to make sure they use those 20 days wisely and don't wait to the last day, so that some snafu might happen with the mail or the Dropbox or whatever. Right.
Remind them this is a trust tax.
And it is a trust tax. So the minute a sale is made at the restaurant or lodging establishment, that dollar that's paid for the 4 or 5% or 10%, that's a county dollar. That establishment is holding a county dollar. It's not their dollar to hold on to and invest. That's a county dollar. It's held in trust for the county until they remit it on the quarter. So these taxes are remitted to the treasurer quarterly.
So what's about Mr. Gleason from Black Twig? He mentioned sort of the state norm at 10%. Or 5%?
Yeah,
I just wanted to know where we lie in that regard.
I think most localities are pretty similar in this. I did not do an analysis. As I noted before, when you fail to pay, the state code, and so in the narrative I color-coded these 3 things: failure, the interest, the failure to pay, and failure to file. So you can see where they're coming from that state code. So the failure to pay is the yellow. You could charge 10% and then jack it up 5% each month until you get to 25%. That's on top of the 10% for not filing and the 10% annual interest. So that, I mean, that seems pretty punitive. Now, when you do have situations where we've seen here and others, a company goes out of business, and then you're trying to chase down those fees, that's when the interest really comes in, and you're because it is a county dollar that they held on to, and maybe for that last quarter of their existence, they were using it to cash flow and maybe shouldn't have. And some more learned restaurants may keep it in a separate account, knowing that bad things can happen. So you could, the wording here does allow some flexibility for the county not to exceed what the state says you can do. And so you don't exceed it now because you only charge a flat 10% for the yellow not paying. But you could stagger the timing of some of these things so that the 10% for not filing kicks in immediately, and the 10% for not paying, maybe that steps in at the next month, and then ramps up from there. So that if you're a day late, maybe you're not the 10 and the 10 and losing your 3, but you're just losing your 3 and it's the first 10. And then if you keep being delinquent, it could hit another 10. If you keep being delinquent, you could hit the 5 and 5 and 5 up to 25.
How often do they file? Is it
Quarterly.
Quarterly?
And so most of them, I don't think, make the mistake twice.
Well, that was my next thing. I was wondering.
It is painful, and I've seen it over the years. Restaurants do use that money. I did it once and learned maybe that should go into a separate account. But sometimes it does get used because you can have a bad month and just need a little cash, and it's just sitting there. But restaurants go out of business because of this as well, because they just get into such a spiral they can't dig out.
And with these high penalties, you can see how it can.
It can add up rather quickly. Do I understand correctly that we have 20 days before it's due? I mean, there's like...
It's due on the 20th of the month.
20th of the month.
After the quarter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So it
to
was
me,
due
that's
April
great.
20th for the quarter ending March 31st.
Yeah, so that resolves, in my mind, and I don't know if you all agree, but Mr. Gleason raised the idea of a grace period, and I think Gary in his opening remarks noted that that's arguably a grace period. So I'm pretty comfortable with the 20 days. My only question is, and I know Treasurer Nick is on the call, there's one situation where I talked to her and absolutely respect how excellent she is at collecting all taxes and making sure that we don't have much aging receivables on our books. She's so good at it. I did raise with her the possibility, or asked if there was a way to give someone relief that where filing came in, it was mailed, and then there was a holiday, a post office holiday, and then it arrived a day late. And I don't know, in that situation, I would still argue the 20-day, now that I've been made aware of the 20-day time period, I don't even know that the grace period there makes sense, because those individuals could have filed earlier than the 20th day. But I do wonder if maybe there are some gradations of penalties on both late filing and late payment that we might want to consider without making it overly complicated. We're simple county.
Ms. Nick noted one way you could try to get this is have filing it monthly. Now that's a lot. That's more work on the business and some more work on her office.
Yeah.
But the sums, I guess, more opportunity to be late, more 12 times per month rather than 4. But the sums wouldn't get as large, so the penalty wouldn't get as large.
That's true.
I just say, I'm glad that the penalties are being enforced as they're written in the code. I'm actually glad to hear that. I've been on the other end of sales tax, never in a restaurant. You only make that mistake one time with the state of Virginia.
Yep.
And you get your sales tax stuff in on time. And I think if it's 20 or 25 days, if it's 10% or 8% or 5%, it's painful. And I think it's just something that we have to learn to do. Having run rentals over the years, sometimes the tenant is late. When you're collecting the money and you're representing that owner, you're able to say, you know what, don't worry about the late fee this month. Don't do it again. I'm glad that we don't have staff that are doing that,
Right.
because this is in the code. And I don't think we need a complicated one strike and you get this. If you've already got 20 days, we can make it 25 if we wanted. But there will be a due date, there will be a penalty, it'll be painful. Yeah, I mean, I think as simple as it is.
I agree.
Mentally, you could say the first of the month is the due date, and that gives you 20 days.
Yeah.
I have a question. Is there any general information, I'm sure when business starts or when you get into business, your taxes are due every quarter, is there anywhere on the website or anywhere where?
I believe the commissioner's site
I'm not
has-
sure that they would visit that until after they,
Yeah, I believe the commissioner's site has a fair amount of information, and of course the form.
Yeah.
But we're a pretty small community, and a lot of word of mouth happens.
Hopefully that first quarter.
But that's an area where we can, I don't know that we've seen issues that first period, but maybe. But that is certainly an area where we would want to do as well as we can to enforce then the potential consequences of being late.
No, I get that, and I agree. I think I wasn't aware of 20 days. I think there's your grace time, and 3 of these incidents happened since January in my district, and I went to see all of them. Mr. Gleason was great to deal with. But the question came up by all 3 is, I know my due date, but I tried to find that somewhere to, a general informational. In my mind, you have a due date, tickle it, you gotta pay it, and move on, but I guess that's why I asked the question.
And what we were asked a number of times, myself, and I'm sure Ms. Nick and others, is there anything we can do?
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is the code is an ordinance adopted by the board after advertising it publicly, twice in the newspaper, and you had public hearings. And so there's nothing that staff or the board can do to change the code, short of going through the public hearing, et cetera, et cetera. So for a one-off change, it's just not a possibility. There's no leeway built in. Now, a board could try to build leeway in, and then I think it gets complicated.
Yeah. And I think the only thing I wanted resolved in my mind is that Dan's a very thoughtful guy. When he raised the idea that maybe our penalties were higher than the rest of the state, if that's not correct, then I'm good with where we currently stand. I appreciate John and Gary's comments.
Yeah, and like I said, I haven't reviewed others, but we're less than the state allows.
Okay.
All right. Moving on to firing range regulation. Mr. Gar.
Firing ranges, yes. Sorry, I'm talking out the tax stuff just. Fire, we have a lot of, in the last few years, a lot of incidents involving people having a good time firing on their property. But in one of the more recent ones, a 30-06 round ended up almost striking a woman in the head while she's sitting at the kitchen table. The most recent one involves a very inadequate backstop that is aimed almost directly in the person's house is behind it. That's I made a note. I went out there personally and inspected it. The other person's house is 330 yards from the backstop, and there's also a gate, farm gate that she has to stop her car and get into, or get out of the car, open it up, and then get back into the property. There's cattle in that field, and there's a farmer, Lee Kaiser, he rents it and has a lot of cattle in there. It's just inherently dangerous. The backstop is just a couple of railroad ties stacked up about maybe 5 feet high. I'm 6'3", and my head was above the height of this backstop. And currently they're shooting 5.56 at it from less than 100 meters away. So I went around behind and looked at there, and there's obviously splintering where some bullets have penetrated. And then there's a rock wall some 3 feet behind that, and it's about 4 feet tall. So obviously no one wants to mess with anybody's Second Amendment. That's not the issue here, but safety more or less is. So I talked to Gary about it, and These two incidents are one of the more recent, but I can tell you stories of several more. So my thought was to draft something that would treat a permanent firing range like a berm and a backstop that's going to be regularly used for private shooting as an accessory use to residential. So we could put an ordinance into the 170-70 as accessory uses that would require a qualified entity, either law enforcement or even something like the NRA, to go out and check to see that the berm as it's positioned would not present a danger as far as line of fire to what's behind it, and also be of sufficient height and thickness and material to stop, high caliber bullets. If you're going to shoot 30 caliber and 5.56, rifle rounds, you need to have some earthen berm or some other material that's going to stop those rounds from over penetrating. So the law enforcement officer would go out, take a look, use a drone, use GIS, whatever he needs to use, make sure there's no dwelling or other building behind, and then would look at the berm construction to make sure that it was safe, that it had lateral deflection protection, and also height and thickness protection. That letter would be sent to the zoning administrator at that point, and then it would be, a by right accessory use of the property. So no one's talking about, law enforcement has suggested to me that there needs to be a periodic reinspection because a lot of times these berms will degrade after multiple rounds have struck it. So I drafted a little real basic thing and sent to Gary only, his eyes only so far. But I don't want to spend any time on it if the board has no appetite for this. And my idea is not the only idea that's out there. You could certainly regulate it in a more drastic way. There's plenty of that. Parcel sizes is one.
Correct.
I've been looking at our CAs and LGA listservs. One of the nightmares is out of Spotsylvania County, and there's this funny thread on that one where they had a ordinance that was 10 acres, okay, and for subdivisions, so it had to be set in a subdivision. Long story short, he said, yada, 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 and the ordinance was ultimately repealed. Don't do that, meaning parcel size regulation. So, and it doesn't really make that much sense anyway. I think individual inspection, yardage to down firing range is way more important than parcel size. Parcel size really doesn't have a whole lot to do with it. Now there are some parcels, like this latest one that we've been dealing with, it's 2 acres. There's no place in my view that's really all that safe off that 2 acres. But now, the board also has power already in the Code of Virginia. You can deem areas of this county as too populated for firing of any kind. That is, you can ban firing of any firearm in areas that this board, in its judgment, deems to be too populated and therefore unsafe. So you could say anything in rural residential, RR2 or RR5, can't shoot it off. You have that authority from the Code of Virginia already. Don't think that's going to be real popular, but that's not my.
When would the, I guess I missed a key point here on your draft that you've given to Gary for his eyes only. When would this berm requirement come into play? Would that be driven by parcel size, or would it be in all cases? Like
The way I've written this is all cases. It's not tied to parcel size.
But what's it tied to?
But it's still, well, right, when does zoning ever get involved? But it still speaks to a firing range as opposed to somebody back out on their field shooting a tin can once in a while or something like that. Which is just, I mean, it's really possible to regulate that, short of what.
Well, I do define firing range.
Yeah, right. So it would be for a distinct firing range.
Now, I was ready to if you want on this.
Before you do that, I want to make it clear that the current zoning ordinance does regulate indoor and outdoor firing ranges and has special requirements for them to obtain a special exception, but those are for other than a personal use. That's a commercial or a larger club type use. So you already have that. So this is for situations where it's not that. And an individual and their buddies, they're really into it. And they shoot at the same place all the time. And this person was conscientious to the extent that they did build a backstop.
They did.
That's to be commended. Maybe inadequate for the type of firearms they were using.
Correct.
And so, just like many other things in the zoning ordinance that are, and this use is an accessory to the inherent use of the property, we just don't have any restrictions on how an individual would maybe be restricted in that accessory use. So we do for other things, like a guest house. You can have a guest house on your property as long as it meets these certain criteria.
Correct.
You can have a firing range on your property as long as it meets these certain criteria. And so this is the idea. Do we want to put in some certain criteria for a firing range for the small group of people who don't automatically recognize the need? And some may not understand that there's an NRE guideline for best practices.
I guess for me, the difficult thing is, like, every once in a while, I like to go out my driveway and shoot my 9mm handgun. It's fun. It feels good. I make a note of my neighbors and whether they're around because I have a small property. If my county representative told me that legislatively they decided that my 1 acre property is not large enough for me to fire my 9mm handgun, I probably wouldn't argue with it because I don't feel great when I'm out there and I'm extremely, extremely careful. That said, it's interesting that Art saw the LGA discussion on parcel size because I also see it as a threat to Second Amendment rights. Separate from my own experience, I had for an extended period of time, and Art will know exactly what I'm talking about, a group of people who lived in a very populated part of the county, well, I'll say relatively populated, relatively small lots where people were firing AR-15s basically in a backyard, and it went on and on and on. My question, and maybe Colonel Settle can comment on this, at what point, or how do we, enforcing these burn requirements, how do we legislate when someone shooting in their backyard morphs into someone's got a shooting range? That to me is the question.
Well, I anticipated that, and I agree, because you don't want to penalize the guy who's a plinker, like you with your knife and your Campbell soup can.
A very accurate clinker.
Bing, bing, and that kind of thing. Of course, that's the joy of living in the country.
Correct.
I do it all the time.
I love it.
And I'm on 2.5 acres every day. So, and of course, my neighbor, he's got full auto too. So, and then there's a groundhog pops up and he'll take a 500-yard 3-round burst at it. So what I envision, this only kicks in if you're going to make a structure. So the way it reads is, because it's not aimed at the plinker, okay? It's aimed at somebody who, like this gentleman that we're dealing with out on Deering Road, he's a firearms enthusiast and he plans to shoot a lot. He's involved in the firearms business. He has Class 3 weapons out there, and it's scary to the neighbors because they hear what they think is a machine gun, and it is. Sometimes it is. And of course, that's not a friendly sound, right? So what this envisions is if you're going to build something that is permanent to shoot at all the time, then you're going to need this inspection. All it is an inspection. You either pass or fail in the judgment of whomever you call, law enforcement or NRA or whomever, whatever outfit is qualified to make this judgment. So it says, firing range outdoor, an area used for the discharge, firing of firearms where targets are backed by a structure or mound that stops bullets without a risk of ricochet. Nothing herein shall be construed to mean an area used for shooting skeet, trap, or other courses for the shooting of shotguns at clay targets. And then under 170-70B-28, accessory uses and home occupations. Firing range outdoor non-commercial. The firing range occasionally used by the owner and his guests that has been inspected and certified as safe by the Rappahannock County Sheriff's Office, RCSO, Virginia State Police, etc., etc. Before the initial use, the owner shall request in writing an inspection by the RCSO or other such law enforcement agency. RCSO shall certify in writing that the firing range backstop is sited in such a way that no structures or roads are in the line of fire, and that the backstop is of sufficient height, width, and depth to stop bullets. Continued use of a firing range requires annual reinspection. That's what the Sheriff's Office had suggested. So this is in its embryonic stage, okay, as far as the draft. But I thought that given the recent events, and they all have been very recent, that perhaps the board may want to consider an action in this regard.
Sure.
Respectfully.
So this is part of the zoning ordinance. So it would ultimately have to have a public hearing for the planning commission and the board of supervisors, which could be combined. But it would go through that whole process to make an amendment to the zoning ordinance.
And it's your opinion, Art, based on a review of material from your peers, that we don't want to go down the parcel size road?
That's what Spotsylvania says in a rather humorous way. So,
and some say subdivisions.
Yes.
Which, I mean, that term just means dividing one parcel into two parcels.
Yeah, and I think zoning district restrictions in Rappahannock County, just thinking about it quickly, that doesn't work either, because I'm zoned A. Do I have thousands of acres? I do not.
There's plenty of
I have
R5
fewer
that's
acres than R2 or RR5.
Yeah.
Typically would have.
that's why I don't think really that approach works. I think a more individualized approach, I'd be much more comfortable knowing that, that Cody Dodson or Jim Jones or Trooper Smith went out there and looked at this berm and then looked at the aerial photography and said, hey, you realize that your neighbor's house is 300 yards downrange of you, okay? So these other boys, they had a bachelor party, and there's 9 of them coming from all around, and it's a shooting party. They've made a beautiful shooting bench, and they're shooting down, but they're inexperienced shooters, and they don't realize the bullets skip, especially in frozen hard winter ground. And so unfortunately, a .30 caliber bullet went into the neighbor's house. It was 500 yards downrange. In the front, pierced the drywall, and whacked right into the kitchen clock, about 2 inches above this woman's head who was sitting at the table. Totally unintended. There was no malice. There was nothing like that. Just pure inexperience and, quite frankly, stupidity, because they could see the house. The leaves had dropped off the trees. So you don't shoot in the direction of somebody's house or barn. You don't shoot when there's cows in the field down range from you. I mean, we all know that, right? We live here. But not everybody does.
And there are civil and criminal consequences.
Once you explain that to them, they generally will cease and desist. But
well, I would actually think that if I owned 2 acres and I wanted to shoot, I'd feel a lot better having that berm inspected. I mean, why wouldn't I?
Of course.
Because now I don't want to be.
Your insurance
I don't want to
company will
pull
love you for that.
I don't want to put a bullet through somebody's house. I mean, that's not where any of us want to be. So I would think this actually protects the shooter. Not as much. Clearly, we want to protect the people that are downrange, but this really protects the shooter the way we approach this. I'd be opposed to, and I don't think our county would. I wouldn't want to sit through the public comment of saying no shooting on this area or this area. We believe in the Second Amendment.
Absolutely. So it was the underlying thought too for me was, if you do have that kind of a cover, i.e. you got an inspection, you can say, hey, look, I did it right, according to the NRA manual or whatever you want to use. And law enforcement says, yeah, you're right, this is pretty safe. One, you've made friends with your neighbors, you can reassure them. And 2, you make friends with your insurance company, because they'll continue to insure your property. And 3, it encourages people to shoot in a responsible way, a safe way. If you know you're going to pass this inspection, you're going to do it right. not just pile a bunch of logs up and start shooting into these old rotten firewood logs, expecting it to stop, a 5.56 or 308.
And not to ricochet off the rock wall.
And not to ricochet off rocks, right? And so the problem with using railroad ties, sometimes there's still spikes down in there. And sometimes there are those S pieces of steel on the ends to keep them from coming apart. And why does the railroad get rid of them? Because they're rotten. That's why they pick them up. So a lot of times they can be hollow on the inside. So you need something other than railroad ties and logs to stop these bullets. That's where law enforcement could come in and say, hey, yeah, you did it right, you piled up. All you gotta do is bring a dump truck, dirty, dump it, or you can dig down and scoop up.
But the bottom line, it's allowed by right. There's just certain prerequisites to enjoy that by right.
For a permanent structure, not for plankers.
Probably a discussion for another day, but one of my constituents mentioned to me, and I found it pretty interesting, and this would be a whole nother can of worms, but it's worth like planting the seed is, a number of counties not too distant from us apparently do have county gun ranges. And to the extent that we want to disincentivize people like me from plinking in their driveway with a handgun and provide people like me a place to go shoot and have fun in a country setting, I wonder if someday in the future, it might make sense to have a county shooting facility, a gun range, that's safe and appropriate and.
We've got the land down at the old Inkfield Club.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
The problem becomes, if I live next door to it,
Correct.
Where do you put it?
Correct.
Don't just dump it off on somewhere else.
Like I said, this is where it's a discussion for another day, but it's, I am thinking about Second Amendment rights, and I'm thinking about people in places like Fodder Sack Road or others who want to shoot, but their neighbors don't want them to shoot. And would it be worthwhile, short of, we're never going to impose a noise ordinance. So without a noise ordinance, how do you at least disincentivize people from plinking in their backyard when they're on small acreage?
Well, you don't move to the country.
That's right, yeah, Fairfax, you're not plinking in your backyard.
Yeah, up there, you can't, in the whole county of Fairfax, you can't discharge a firearm.
Fair point.
Not even a BB gun.
Fair point.
Not even a pelt gun.
And that justifies the gun range, right?
Yeah. So, and that's why they have guns, Prince William and all that, but they're county run ones. And that's nice. But out here, if you don't want to listen to somebody shooting at birds or having a skeet range or plinking or something, don't come here. Because this is God's country. Pretty much you got your rights.
I've got a couple questions. Not to keep this conversation going on the other gun range, that's another conversation.
Definitely, I apologize.
Yeah, no, I understand your thinking. So that language that you read, or you say the sheriff's office has something in the support of, okay.
The sheriff was on call with Major and I.
Okay.
And she is advocating for minimum parcel size. I'll put that out there. The sheriff is down. I just happen to respectfully disagree. I don't think that's going to have any. It'll stop maybe this problem that's going on right now, but I think it'll cause others.
Right. That probably could be challenged too.
You could be on the edge of 1,000-acre parcels.
So when does it transition from being cleaner to something more?
Yes.
And so you come to my house and I say, I'm just clinking out here. But someone else interprets that as being, well, no, you need a berm. And
correct.
so I think there's a gray area in there, and I can see that would be the first place someone their mind would go to. I don't know what that is, and the other question that comes to mind is the berm inspections, and you're right, I think you said it, there are standards, NRA has standards, I believe, but there are standards out there, what a berm needs to be made of, what it needs to look like. Yes, that's a training piece, sheriff's office going to have to become familiar with it, it's not just sending a deputy out there, a law enforcement officer or otherwise saying, that looks good to me. If something happens and then, then it's tested in the courts or civil or what have you, I think there's some specifics that has to be ironed out.
I agree that one of the issues is One is an objective standard. Is there a structure or a road within the cone of fire of the intended backstop? That's yes or no. If yes, no good, period. And then the sufficient height and thickness, while that does sound somewhat subjective, I'm comfortable with letting the judge put parameters around what that means. So if a sheriff comes out there, deputy, and it's 12 feet tall, and he says that ain't tall enough, they come to court and they say, hey, this guy's not, I want a mandamus, I want him to issue this inspection. The judge very well may say, you're right, that's being arbitrary and capricious. So I think common sense would, and judicial common sense would fill in any kind of those gray areas that you're talking about. But the point that you're right down on the nub on is when do you transition from clinking to needing this? This ordinance wouldn't answer that question. Because the only time this ordinance kicks in is if you are going to build one, or are building one, or planning on building one, a berm. You're saying to yourself, I want to have a berm to shoot at all the time. So then that kicks this in. We're not here to tell you when you cross the line between, professional shooting or constant shooting and when you're still just a player. That's not how if we go down that road, then it becomes
I think that's
hard to do.
another day of conversation too.
So how do we move forward on?
Well, really, I'd say this is really a litmus test of, does the board want to go anywhere near this? Is this something you want staff and planning commission to explore and bring something to you?
I'll put forward a motion that we go ahead and authorize Mr. Goff and Mr. Curry to advance Mr. Goff's draft into more finished form for I don't know that, I guess we'll need to review it in final form for our review and then for subsequent presentation, planning commission, board, public hearings, etc.
And then that would be a public way, so the citizens would be able to see it too, and they could provide you public comment before you get down the road to a public hearing.
Yeah, so I think that's the first step, is just to bring something back to us in more finished form for review, maybe at our next board meeting.
Okay.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Nobody wants to touch it.
Can I ask a question before we go?
It's not discussion.
Or has the current situation been resolved, or is it still ongoing?
I don't know if it has. I think it has. I went out there and talked to the gentleman who, by the way, is a very nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was very cooperative and so forth. I just had to say, quite frankly, man, if you continue shooting at this particular backstop, in my opinion, you're kind of recklessly handling the firearm here. So I think that has stopped it, and then we talked about the option of redirecting his berm, which I think he's open to. So hopefully it has, and I haven't heard anything from the neighbor since the 10 or 12 calls I got over the weekend, last weekend. So, and Steph is laughing.
It's so much of this is just about being a good neighbor. I've said it so many times about different land use things. While I was campaigning, one of my favorite house stories, I stopped at this one house and noise came up and they said, yeah, I just wanted to go outside and have a nice dinner with my wife and blah, blah, blah. And so-and-so just started shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting. And I listened, that's what my job was, right? So then I go next door, hi, introduce myself, I moved out to the country so that I could shoot my guns. And, and I thought, all this needed was for A to call B and say, hey, I'm going to be out here shooting for a fit, or for B to call A and say, hey, we've had, we're eating dinner, can you wait 30 minutes or something? It's just all about being with neighbors.
Yeah.
It baffles me sometimes.
All right, we have a motion, second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thanks, Art, for
Thank you for
Thank you
doing
for
that.
that.
Thank you.
I know you've been working hard. Can we do the final?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
It should be, ideally.
Generally quarterly, but
But
could be
not-
this one.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a recommendation. I think we do need to schedule it probably sooner than later. I think and I would suggest maybe we do the chiefs and the public safety committee meeting again, and here, tell me what you think, but certainly Madam Chair as well, but I think they need to hear from us. So that, I mean, it's on tape, but they'll make up the narrative potentially based on, I won't say make up, but they'll fill in the narrative, what they think. And just open ourselves up to questions, and then maybe there's no questions and we move on.
Yeah.
I think that's sooner than later.
Sure.
And,
I agree.
I think this has been very productive. Really.
Yeah.
yeah, and then, if there's a couple other topics that
Date and time, you go straight for the chief.
yeah, we do it for the chiefs meeting, then we do that.
All right, who's next? We've got planning commission.
We didn't meet this month. I'm sure, or last month, we will be meeting this month, I'm sure, after some of the things we've got to discuss.
Yep. Fire levy board, they met, but I think you've already reported on that.
But the body met, and then it voted to authorize the chair and vice chair to review the revised Chester Gap documents, which after the chiefs reviewed them, that process has completed. And so I received the revised packet from Chief Carter, and so I'll make sure Bonnie knows the numbers. It's on my calendar for tomorrow.
Okay. Jail.
Yeah, I thought our jail meeting was a really good meeting. Very impressive staff there, and Gary chairs the jail board. And I did raise a couple of questions there about funds held in the jail bank account, which Gary handled quite well. I wanted to make sure, and Gary, you were really the architect of the true-up process, is that right?
Well, it's been going on since the facility opened, but there's some difficulties in the early years.
Okay, so just to back up for a second, there is a true-up process by which each locality, Warren, Shendo, and Rappahannock County, and correct me if I missed anything here, but basically we're paying in based on recent historical data on inmate population proportionally, and then we're paying in our share based on the expected inmate population from each of those localities, and at the end of each fiscal year, there's a resolution of any excess payments that are trued up and paid back to the localities. And in reviewing the bank account balances of the regional jail, it occurred to me that it seemed like there was a lot of cash on hand, but the bondholder that stands behind the financing and the construction of the jail requires a certain amount of cash on hand. And so obviously you don't want to cut that too close, but I did raise a question because unlike Warren and Shenandoah, we care about tens of thousands of dollars when it comes to balancing our budget in Rappahannock County. If there are tens of thousands of dollars in excess funds that are sitting in the jail bank account, I at least want to understand whether that should be the case. And so I did ask for at least an understanding of the general history of how those funds were accumulated over time, and making sure that the jail is not holding more cash than it ought to under the bond-related requirements, so that if there is anything aside from the annual true-up process that residually has remained in the hands of the jail, then maybe we can get some of that back.
Yeah.
And that certainly would make a much bigger difference for the other two involved localities than us, but I think little dollars matter a lot in Rappahannock County.
Yeah, and one of the big areas where money is held is for capital funds.
Yes.
To maintain that building, which is relatively new, but won't always be. And so when big expenses come, none of the partners want to have the authority board come and say, oh, by the way, we need extra however much this year to redo the roof. And so as we go through this true-up process, one of the decision points is how much of excess revenue over actual expenses do we sweep to that capital fund?
Correct. And one thing I do want to, Superintendent Gilkerson has been fantastic about seizing opportunities and executing plans for additional revenue generated from things like, I don't remember which locality it was, but they had a sewage problem where they basically had to move all their inmates out. And because we have unused bed capacity at the jail, he was able to take that opportunity to basically provide space and generate revenue, which benefited all three localities by just being able to pivot quickly and saying, hey, we can accommodate those inmates. So I really, hats off to the superintendent. He's really, I think, does a great job, and his whole team does a great job. And the fact that they can pivot so quickly to accommodate requests from other localities to house inmates under any circumstances is really benefiting us all, and I hope our taxpayers understand that. They're very good stewards of our money up there at the regional jail.
Thank you. Virginia Career Works.
They don't meet again until June. We'll meet next month.
Okay. Let's move into the treasurer's report. Because of BoardDocs being down earlier, I didn't get a chance to look.
Tani pointed out in her email, and she conveyed this, that the drop in your available cash on hand is predictable based on a number of things, using it and not having some grant draws come in yet. You should get used to this sort of scenario as you invest those dollars into projects.
It's nice to have those dollars to invest.
And what year is the bottom line? The blue, dark blue one?
Yes, the blue with the round circles right there, right where Gary's
That's
pointer
the
is.
current year.
And what I'm asking is,
Oh,
Down here at 2019.
oh, I see.
2019, I think.
And we took off the first couple of years that actually dipped below zero.
good, that's a reasonable edit. Yeah. That doesn't tell a good story.
Let's go to meals and lodging.
Well, where are we? March would have been the third quarter, or is this calendar
Right,
quarter?
but this is, she's counting in the fourth quarter, what we actually received in the fourth quarter for the third quarter. So this takes into account when the cash actually comes in, not the accrual process.
It's good to compare year to year.
Monthly sales tax, let's look at that one, please.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little below last year, about the same as 2 years ago. But the preceding months was
Yeah, we're
quite high.
significantly.
And this is the normal drop off after the Christmas rush. Before the tourist rush kicks in.
We're still on track to significantly exceed our fiscal 26 projection. And we have increased fiscal 27's projection to match that increased fiscal 26 projection plus 2%.
I think we should link it to home occupancy when people actually move into their house, because there's a lot of Amazon orders I can.
You know that?
We should track it by address, is what you're telling me?
I think I shop a lot.
For some reason, I didn't just move in, but I have a lot of Amazon packages.
Let me see what my household ranks.
Yeah. Everybody keep it up.
Anything else anybody would like to look at?
The detail of these reports, everything's in there, budget line by budget line. So when you have a spare moment, you can dig in and start to look at how different things are spending out. Most, the compensation lines, they spend up pretty predictably, other ones don't. Some are all spent in July because it's a full year thing, or quarterly because it's like a jail board. Or
Bonnie, the fiscal year 2027 revenue adjustment related to, I guess you were talking about, it was on meals and lodging or sales?
That was on sales tax. That's already baked into the fiscal 27 budget.
Okay, because I was wondering if, as we approach a possible adoption of a budget, I didn't want to lose sight of, certain of my pet projects, the cemetery support fund, or the don't go to cemetery support fund, i.e. the AED project. Both ends of the life spectrum. I just didn't know, but we can address that in some other way besides through the budget process.
As soon as you said that, I saw out of the corner of my eye the twinkle in his eye, the flash.
I wasn't asking for much. It was just a little money for cemeteries and a lot more money for AEDs, but we'll work that.
Yeah. Review of legal matters, there's nothing that's changed?
No, of course you have a closed meeting to discuss the first two today. Mr. Cap should be available to discuss with you and Mr. Goff and myself.
Okay.
If you haven't looked at the Emergency Services Coordinator report, for the first time, we now have the Region 5 EMS Advisory Committee meeting that Mr. Stevens was able to attend down below.
So the agenda and the presentation is there, so in a few minutes, this is their kickoff meeting.
So does this mean that Jack Atkins and Lisa Palmer are no longer?
Correct. That body is gone.
Okay.
And it's replaced with this body. One of the outputs from their first meeting is that they'll be looking for people to serve on subcommittees.
Oh, okay.
So Darren, I'm sure, will be talking to the board about.
Yeah, I know Lisa, really, she works there today and is, totally appreciate both their contributions and be good to keep them involved in something like that.
Yeah, and Mr. Stevens said it was a very good meeting. He thought it was a great group.
Good.
Yeah.
I just want to get your input on one of the construction items. So as we're finally getting close to doing something here.
Is that the new courthouse? No.
Yeah. This building you're looking at was built at the same time as the courthouse and used very similar brickwork. But back in, I believe it was the early 80s when these new windows were put in.
Yeah.
The brickwork doesn't exactly match the historical work.
You think?
So,
Jigsaw puzzle.
yeah, no, of course, when they put the stairway addition, they didn't do a great job matching, but there's not much we can do. Although there's a iron wash on the mortar here. In other words, I'm just parroting from the architect that can be done on the newer brick to help it match better. So the question is, do we tear out this old stuff and put in things that match the old stuff? And it's a function of how far do you want your dollar to spread on this envelope work.
Is there something up on the chimney that didn't match also, I thought?
Oh, yeah, the chimney's been
Yeah.
off. These are in very bad shape. They're going to be completely replaced. point, and there's a lot of work up here. All four of these old chimneys have work. Around this window also, and there's a bunch of stuff in that attic that needs to come out, and so we've talked, maybe that window will come out to get stuff out. Not a lot, it's not easy to get stuff out of that attic.
The risk of the chimneys falling over was how this whole conversation started, I think.
Yeah, so I guess I wanted to get some, I'm not a vote necessarily, but I wanted to get your general feeling of when we're doing this, do we want to fix it, actually remove those, put in the proper size brick and the proper striking of mortar, or just kind of do the iron wash and move on? This porch is coming off and being replaced with a little bit smaller porch.
Yeah, I guess it's based on cost, you know. I know in those eaves, I don't know if you all looked at it, even the roof where it's starting to deteriorate, but the eaves are rotting in your eye.
Yeah, so all the woodwork, that's done, the roof's replaced, these are other things. Do we do it at the same time?
When was the eaves and all in place?
Oh, it's in the it'll be in this project.
Oh, yeah, I get that.
Need to be, yeah.
I'm wondering, are we gonna have sufficient amount of funds
Well,
to do that?
there's $1 million in a bucket right now, and the CIP adds to that. So how far the dollar goes, continues on to the old portions of the Treasurer's Office Commission on Revenue. We can make that dollar stretch. So it's just, it's not clear to me how true to a historical, restoration you want to do. Right now, that brick keeps the water on the right side of the wall. It just, when it was done in the early 80s, it just wasn't.
I think if
A historical architect would never do that.
I think if it's just a marginal cost, then we should just do it right.
Yeah.
I'm kind of tired of the patching and cobbling together.
And this is so visible.
Yeah, it really is. It's a good point. And what's the use of, what are we going to achieve with the restoration of this building? What are we going to use it for?
Well, you're obviously protecting it for the future. This whole end over here is full of cells with so much concrete and steel.
Right.
It will never be used for anything other than storage. The other side, the down here is offices, and then upstairs is an open area that has function, and the sheriff, I think, is starting to use it for evidence and whatnot because it is pretty well restricted, tucked in away behind other things.
Okay.
And then this is the old kitchen, which is also.
It would be nice to just get it done right, and Debbie's right, it is very visible on it's on Salem, right?
Yeah. And you
Yeah,
make that
particularly
porch
after this big
smaller,
tree
it's
was
gonna
cut
stand out even more.
Yeah, I think just.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it right.
Thank you. Happy to answer any other questions you have about that, any project, but I just wanted your input on that.
Everybody good on that?
Good.
Okay. All right, going into matters presented by the board.
Madam Chair,
Sorry, John, you look like you're ready.
Could I present? I wanted to speak before Mr. Whitson, so
That's hard to do.
I had to jump on it.
Go for it.
So I wish we had the full house we had earlier for what I wanted to talk about. It's after our last meeting, we heard from some of the businesses in Sprayville. It's difficult to kind of look at them and say, we're going to charge you 10% for lodging, when the largest, most successful business in the county is paying 2.5. It's difficult to have that conversation with them. I realize we don't have the authority to levy the sales and use tax within the town of Washington, but that's still a difficult conversation. There's been kind of a discussion that this is poor planning on our part. I know when I was sitting on the sidelines, this was a discussion, poor planning on our part. And I think we should really acknowledge where we are today. Really, in the last 40 years, we've successfully held off development. We've kept tax rates relatively low. Had one tax increase in 6 years.
Yeah.
And that, in the most inflationary time of my life, I mean, that's pretty amazing. I don't think that's poor planning. We have no debt. We're gonna have debt. We have no debt today. I mean, it's pretty amazing, and I think we've been incredibly successful. I don't think it's poor planning. I think we've been very successful. But I think that, I'll put you again, Gary, if I can, dollars are hard. You know, we're facing EMS, increased fire and rescue and EMS. We're facing the courthouse. You know, I think we're going the right direction in the courthouse, but I struggle with that, truthfully. Because I have to say, before I started coming to supervisors meetings and knowing and being a part of this, I had walked into this building fewer than 5 times in 21 years. My life does not pivot around the courthouse as a county resident. I think most of our residents probably feel the same way.
Try to stay out of the court.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I don't want to be here. I'd rather build a $2 million courthouse and an $18 million school. That's what I'd like to do. My life revolves around that school. That's where my kids play soccer. I drive by it every day, multiple times, a lot of times. Somebody in my family does. And so I you know, it's difficult for me to think, okay, we are going to pay to build this building here. I think it's the right thing. And I've tried to, when we heard today, hey, we could build a $4 million one. I had this flash of hope. Let's see what they did. No, it's temporary. They're going to spend $60 million. So I mean, I just think that's what we have to do. But I'm really surprised that the people that drive by the courthouse every day and that have customers who will view that every single day haven't come to the table and said, let's have a conversation. And I say I'm surprised and disappointed. I mean, they should be at the table having the conversation with us. I'm disappointed that they haven't. And I've sat here and heard Mr. Whitson say that a few times, but I'll just say it quietly and let him say that, but I felt like I needed to say that today. I realize we don't have taxing authority, and so I don't say this just as a, what did Mr. Carney say, as a political move. That's not the goal here. I think that there's another difficult dollar that's hitting us that we discussed today, and that's fire and rescue. And so as we think about the town, I guess 2 things that I would like to think about are, number one, and maybe we need to lean on staff for this, is number one, how many calls do we have in the town, versus outside the town? I think that's an important number we need to think about. Is we're thinking about increasing our fire levy tax by 1 cent, which is about $200,000. I think there's this in revenue for us. I think we need to think about how much of that's going to be used within the town. The other question is whether, as we have a business here that's focused on bringing more and more and more people, that's the goal. I think we need to think about a fire district, a special district within the town that is taxed differently. And I guess my question is to the 2 gentlemen sitting at this table is whether that's something we can do. And I'd like to explore the legality of doing something like that. We certainly don't want to misstep and rush forward, but I think if there's a way, we don't have the ability to tax sales and use. We do have the ability to tax fire and rescue. And I think we need to understand those costs. And this isn't, I like the people in the town. This isn't that I have anything, any issue with anybody within the town. It's difficult to sit here in the public comment period and have people stand up and say, the well's almost dry and you're coming back to it. It's difficult to hear people stand up and say, we're trying to start our business out and you go from 4% to 10%. How are we supposed to do that? It's difficult to hear those things and think, well, we won't explore other avenues. I think this is one avenue we need to explore. What's the true cost of fire and rescue within the town, and what do we project that to be? And what options do we have to tax that differently than the rest of the county?
I'm really thinking you mean all of 911, because there's more than fire and rescue that goes to the town.
That's a good point.
And a lot of times, they're the first ones on the scene.
Very good.
So I think this is a public safety issue that we need them to play a part of. That's a great point.
Mr. Snow, was that related to the fire levy only?
Fire levy only, can we create a special fire district or special?
District where the fire levy has to be different from countywide?
So our fire district is countywide, can there be two? I guess is the question. Distinct fire districts, multiple, with different tax rates.
And if we create two, I guess that, maybe this is the third question, so it's how many calls are there, and I think it's a good point, 911 calls, just in general. Where do we think that's going? You know, we have to think about that. Can we create a separate fire district, and how do we, what leeway do we have to tax that differently? I mean, you know, if it's.
And track the funds and allocate funds and all those things.
Yeah, so are there some stipulations around that?
Good, thank you. You ready, Mr. Sutton? Matters presented by the board, got anything?
Right after that.
Yeah.
I'm with you. That's a big matter.
His eyes are twinkling all over the place.
Mr. Sherman?
I'm like Mr. Settle, I'm not gonna try and follow that one.
Mr. Wilson? You want to just say I agree?
No, this is somewhat refreshing, that I can talk about something other than the town of Washington. Thank you. So I wanted to talk quickly about ADUs. I had a very thoughtful constituent ask me about accessory dwelling units in this legislation. And in that conversation, one thing that occurred to me is, I don't know that I've ever voted against an accessory dwelling unit. And it seems to me, as we try to manage our time and keep our meetings shorter, public hearings for accessory dwelling units that we basically always agree are a good idea. I mean, I haven't yet seen one that wasn't a good idea in my view. I even offered to vote for one twice for a young couple who were like, we want to stay in the county. And I said, wow, if I could vote twice, I would. So a lot of times these come before us and they just, frankly, they check all the boxes. Like they promote housing that people can afford. They promote young people staying in the county. And so with that background, I just want to say publicly that I would have no issue with accessory dwelling units being a by right outside of an SC special exception process type thing. And to take it even farther, I would consider, thinking about land buffer and acreage, I would consider parcel size a potential variable for allowing even more square footage than I think currently we're 1,200 square feet, 200 feet within a primary residence. I could see like a scale, and this really is not my original idea, but a very thoughtful constituent suggested it, and I thought it makes sense. And this one I would have really need you to all think through, but would it ever be appropriate for certain parcel sizes to allow more than one accessory dwelling unit? But then you kind of run in conflict with our one dwelling on a parcel provision of our zoning ordinance, which does require special exception to get around. But I think given that we've tried to tighten things up on short-term rentals, given the discussion about housing affordability continues, I think that accessory dwelling units are a very sensible way to at least go at the affordable housing issue. And I, for one, would be somewhat comfortable, given my experience voting on these, to just make them by right. That's all that is.
Which is good, because that's going to be part of the planning commission conversation. Thank you. The only thing I have is, because I recused myself, I didn't really have an opportunity to thank Chief Brown and Kevin Williams for years, 30 plus years for Chief Brown. But this COVID concept that Gary Settle brought up truly was Todd basically trying to figure out how to save his EMS crew and to be able to take care of the citizens of Chester Gap. And he says it all the time that he is only focused on the citizens, and I believe that. He really gave it his heart, and I know he's tired. So today was difficult for me, because I know they worked really hard. But boy, am I disappointed that we couldn't get people to the table. That's good enough.
Thank you.
You did a good job.
All right. I think at this point we go in that closed meeting.
There's no problem.
Somebody want to pull it up on their computer and read?
I'd rather try.
Thank God, finally somebody else on our board cried instead of me. It's always me. Oh.
See you later.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll read it. I move that the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors conduct a closed meeting in accordance with Code 22-37.11A of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of consulting with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual, we didn't read the whole thing.
You signed up for it.
I know. Can I back off?
I would.
Or probable litigation, where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body. The subject matter of the closed meeting will be Williams et al. Versus Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors, circuit court case number, etc.
It's the L23000043.
There we go. Yeah, my eyes are that good. And case number, we read that.
24000020.
Et al. Versus Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors et al. That's my motion.
I will second your motion.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Yes.
Mr. Settle.
Aye.
Mr. Jones.
Aye.
Ms. Coleman.
Aye.
Mr. Whitson.
Aye.
And I also.
Excellent. I'm gonna pull that
Thank
one
you.
back if you